there, folks. I hope you are all doing well. It has been a fun, eventful week for myself, but I hope the rest of y'all are doing well. We are, of course, here for another Creation Science Theater. And hopefully, this will be the last one covering Ryan Cox. At least for a while. I don't know, we might take a look at his other presentation. Because he's, well, one of his other presentations. He's done a few. Um, but this will at least be the last episode on this specific one. We are at present 56 minutes into his hour and 20-minute long presentation. And come what may, we are finishing this today. So strap yourselves in. It's going to be a long one for sure, at least 2 hours, maybe 3 or 4, though hopefully not. We're just going to have to see how it goes. I will say this is going to be a closed theater, so sadly, audience participation is going to be limited to the chat, though I will do my best to be active with that. We may have a guest or two pop on later, but we're going to have to see on that. For now, it's just me, Ryan, and the birds. But I hope y'all are still excited. I do see we do have a few people watching right now. Just again, gonna say hi, hello. Hope you are well. We do not currently have a super chat goal, so I might go ahead and set that up. Well, this is definitely going to be a long stream, so maybe I can set it for. Maybe I can set it for 3 hours. That's the maximum it will let me do. And we're almost certainly going to reach that time. Oh boy. Let's see. Any suggestions for a super chat goal? We could. Well, I don't have it installed. I was going to say we could play a little bit Jurassic World Evolution, but I don't have that right now. I do have Ancestors installed, which is an interesting game where you go through the whole process of human evolution. Could be interesting. Yeah, why not? Here, well, what's the game's full title? Ancestors. I believe it's the Humankind Odyssey. Yes. Take a look at that. We can talk about human evolution for a little bit. It has been a while since we've, talked about human evolution, so that could be fun. So I'll go ahead and start that goal. So if we hit that, then I guess we'll talk about human evolution a little bit after we're done with the birds and the dinosaurs, which again, probably going to take a while. We have 26 minutes of presentation left, and then there's like an hour's worth of Q&A that we're probably not going to dive too far into. But we'll see. We will see. And we'll say hello to Fits of Rage and hello to Babatond. Hello, hello. And then, without further ado, I suppose we can get started. So, last time with Mr. Ryan here. Oh boy. So, last time we were talking about how all of these animals are definitely birds and not dinosaurs because they don't have the characteristic features of dinosaurs, even though they have all the traits of a dinosaur. We went over Archaeopteryx, Caudipteryx, and Microraptor in particular. We went over how he's wrong about their hand formula, the acetabulum, which is the hole in the middle of a dinosaur hip. Well, I mean, you have an acetabulum too, it's just closed. It's where the femur meets with the hip socket. In dinosaurs, it's like an open circle, whereas in you, it's like a cup. That's where the term acetabulum comes from. I think it translates to like vinegar cup because named after a kind of dishware the Romans liked. We also went over how he's just completely wrong about every aspect of Caudipteryx's anatomy, except for it having pennaceous feathers. It has a beak, yes, also has teeth. It does have a supratemporal fenestra, which is a hole in the top of the skull. We actually looked at the skull to show him wrong there. Short tail, longer than birds, and it has the muscle attachment points that you would see in a dinosaur. Reverse toe, it does not have. Yeah, just all this was wrong. To no one's surprise, I'm sure. I did rewind a little bit, so we're going to get a little bit of information about the bird hip and how it is definitely unique. It's definitely not, by the way, but we'll get into that. So, let us begin. Go on, Ryan. Enlighten us.
Actually, you can see in it just an incredible creature. And speaking of the hips, there's this neat little notch called the antitrochanter. And if you see that notch, that is unique to birds. Birds have that notch in it. Archaeopteryx has that notch. Caudipteryx does not, but it's got different features on it. Not every bird has this, but most of the time they do have it. And if you find that notch, that antitrochanter, you kind of see it there. Let me see if I can get my laser pointer to work here. There you go. See right there. You see that notch right there. Okay, right there. That notch. It's right there. That is on Archaeopteryx. And right here, this is Microraptor. It's
okay. So the antitrochanter. This is a here. Let me pull up a diagram here. So the antitrochanter is a muscle attachment point on hips of birds. He's correct there. It is in fact a feature of, or it is in fact something you see on birds. However, it's not just seen on birds, despite what he is telling us. And I gotta find. Yep, ResearchGate. Come to the rescue, ResearchGate. There we go. I'm just showing a paper from 2018. I think I showed this at the end of the last stream, but we'll go over it again quick. So hip joint articular soft tissues of non-dinosaurian dinosauromorpha and early dinosauria. Evolutionary and biomechanical implications for Saurischia. Saurischia being the group of dinosaurs that includes theropods, so meat-eating dinosaurs, and sauropods, so the big, long-necked dinosaurs. And we did I spell it right? Trying to search for antitrochanter. Antitrochanter. Okay, it's not wanting to let me search. That is great. That's fine. Oh, well, if we could. Oh, there it goes. So if we let's see, there's a specific diagram here that I'm trying to find. Okay, so these are specific points on the pelvis of various dinosaurs showing where the antitrochanter would attach. So here it is on Cerosaurus, which is an early sauropodomorph. Apatosaurus, which I don't think needs an introduction. Dilophosaurus, Allosaurus, T-Rex, and Bambiraptor, which, yes, is an actual dromaeosaur. And again, here it is. Again, with Apatosaurus coelophysis, which is an early carnivorous dinosaur, T Rex again, and Falcarius, which is a therizinosaur. So, yeah, the Antitrochanter at least seems to be a thing within Saurischia, not specific to birds. We used to think it was specific to birds, but Ryan has not done any research on anything within the last 20 years. And I can say that because I'm pretty sure he is basing this anti-trochanter stuff on a paper from 2007 and Alan Fiducia, who, of course, is going to blatantly ignore anything that goes against his ideas, which is why Fiducia is not really taken seriously, at least not when it comes to this. Also, yes, any dinosaur can be shown to have unique characteristics. That does not make them not dinosaurs. That is true. Because if they were all the same, then they wouldn't be different. You're going to have differences within a group. Anyway, all that to say, this anti-trochanter stuff also in non-avian dinosaurs, not only in birds. In fact, I believe this paper specifically mentions Velociraptor. Let's see. Raptor. It does talk. Uh-huh. Yep. Let's see. So, in fact, they document an unequivocal transition to the expanded antitrochanter in Velociraptorinae, found in both Deinonychus and Velociraptor. Well, isn't that interesting? Especially considering what he's going to go on to say about dromaeosaurs.
It's got the same notch as well. All of those things showing it is 100% bird, not a hybrid, half dinosaur, half bird. Everything shows that it is a bird. One of the great studies that was published in 2024 regarding that. Another thing that is
I think he's referencing a 2023 paper by Fiducia. Yeah, I think he's referencing a 2023 paper by Fiducia there. So, and that's what that talks about and what stance it takes. But now on to another feature of the anatomy.
Sometimes shown that says, "Oh, look! You see these little." Let me see if my pointer thing will work again here. Right here on Velociraptor. You see those little? You got the ribs, and then you got these little ones that are going backwards, kind of at an angle. Those are called uncinate processes. They found those with some velociraptors, and they're like, oh, it's a bird. It's got to be a bird because it has that. Because
no, uncinate processes are a thing we see in various archosaurs. I know at least in various dinosaurs. We have them in dromaeosaurs. I want to say we have them in. I want to say we have them in oviraptorosaurs. Let's see. Okay, maybe not oviraptorosaurs. Infinite processes. Let's see. Uh, Let's see here. Are you? Let's see. We have infinite scars on things like tyrannosaurs. I'm seeing here. Oh, where are you? Okay. So right in here, so dinosaurs with pink have bony uncinate processes, which are again those little structures coming off the ribs. And blue are ones that have marks on their bones indicating cartilaginous uncinate processes. And that might be kind of weird to hear, uh, but it's pretty easy for cartilage to turn into bone. It's, in fact, a lot of bone forms in cartilage before it ossifies. And dinosaurs in particular have a tendency to turn cartilage into bone, just in their skeleton. They do it in their tails, probably did it on their heads, just all over the body. So, yeah, bony uncinate processes, cartilaginous uncinate processes, and basically everything else, including crocodilians. And I'm just gonna go up here. Okay, so this is a blog post on a specific paper, the researchers explaining their paper. Let me see if I can find. Yeah. Yep, here we go. So here's the actual paper that figure comes from, just in case anyone wants to check it out. So there's the title, published in Communications Biology. So again, a feature of the skeleton that Ryan says is not found in other dinosaurs. That definitely is. And no, finding them in Velociraptor does not make Velociraptor a bird. Though it is pretty interesting that a close relative to birds also has a similar skeletal characteristic. Didactic Dreams asks, hello there. How bad is it so far today? Well, this is the second piece of skeletal anatomy he's been wrong about, so it's a good start, I'd say.
See here on the bird. See, they look the exact same, don't they? Well, maybe not. The chickens kind of looks a little different. But anyway.
Oh, and for clarity, why do they have those processes there? It seems to help them breathe. It also functions in stiffening the torso. So makes the torso stronger and helps them breathe. They're basically a muscle attachment point, is what the uncinate processes are.
That's a bird feature. It's got to be on a bird. Well, no, not necessarily. Let's see. I pulled up the list here. They are found on crocodiles. They are found in other reptiles, not all reptiles, but in some reptiles. And it's believed to assist in the breathing muscle limb attachment. The going hypothesis is that they serve as a reinforcement for the airflow. Okay, and not every bird has these. Some have them, some don't. Some reptiles have them, some don't. And if you're going to say this is what makes it a bird, then you would also have to say that ornithomimosaurs, ankylosaurs, thescelosaurs, ornithopods, and stegosaurs are also birds because they have them.
And again, Ryan has it backwards. We're not saying that Velociraptor is a bird. It is a dinosaur. Birds are just also dinosaurs because these uncinate processes seem to be an archosaur trait. Because they're found in crocodilians too. Dinosaur trait, not bird trait.
Also. So now that.
Or at least not a trait unique to birds, I should specify.
That doesn't really make the tail. Look at the tail. You see how his tail gets solid there at the end? Okay. Kind of becomes ossified altogether there. That's what makes it a bird. And you'll see it.
Yes. Well, not about it being a bird, but yes. It might be harder for you guys to see because I know the stream is going to degrade the quality. But dromaeosaurs in particular are infamous for having these really long bony rods in their tails. Those are called ossified tendons. Those are cartilage that is reinforced by bone, and it's made to stiffen the tail. Interestingly, in dromaeosaurs, the stiffening seems to be preventing it from going like bending side to side, but not from bending up and down. So a dromaeosaur would be able to like curl its tail up and down or move it about up and down, but only move it from side to side at the very base. So the tail probably would have moved like, do I have a pencil? I thought I had a pencil at my desk. Well, I guess this, sorry for the noise. I guess this colored pen will have to work. But as they walked, a dromaeosaur probably like swung its tail around like this, which I think is kind of cute. If you've ever seen a roadrunner walking, probably would have looked pretty similar to that, which is also part of why a lot of people a lot of people call roadrunners little velociraptors, and they really look the part. Also, hello, Maya. I hope you are doing well. We are talking about fluffy dinosaurs, which I know you love.
Okay. Kind of becomes ossified altogether there. That's what makes it a bird. And you'll see a diagram like this. This is a great diagram.
And again, Velociraptor having these ossified tendons does not make it a bird. Like, having ossified tendons in your tail is a trait across a wide variety of theropods. It is one of the uniting features of the group Tetanurae, which includes dromaeosaurs, birds, and tyrannosaurs. Like, it's a one of the defining features of the group, literally giving it the name. Tetanurae means stiff tail. But it is also found in other groups. Duck-billed dinosaurs, for example, they have massive ossified tendons in their tails. Like they're built like a suspension bridge. It's actually really cool.
Put together by Dr. Gabby Haynes. Excellent. It's really good. Kind of shows this thing. And some have taken it then and used it to say, well, raptors, you see it has Microraptor up there. Well, that means all raptors are birds. Oh, no, Microraptor is a bird.
So for reference, this is from Answers in Genesis. You mentioned Gabriella Haynes a minute ago. She is Answers in Genesis's. Wow, that's a mouthful to say. She is AIG's resident paleontologist. They consider everything up here to be a bird. Like, that is AIG's official stance, meaning they would consider Velociraptor to be a bird, which Ryan here does not agree with. Even so, he will continue to use their diagram. Also, for the record, Sinornithosaurus up here, this dromaeosaurid, as is accurately labeled here, covered in feathers. We've had feathers of Sinornithosaurus covered in feathers since the 90s. The late 90s, but still the 90s.
But the Velociraptor, he being there, the dromaeosaur, like I have behind me, he's also in that category because his tail gets solid as it goes down. Well, a lot of coelurosaurs do, but there's a difference in how Microraptors does that and how dromaeosaurs does it. Let me grab the tail. Let me grab it.
There is not much of a difference at all, for the record. It does not help that Microraptor is a dromaeosaurid. Like, they are built very similar. The difference is scale, because Microraptor is a meter long and would have weighed like less than a pound, whereas Velociraptor probably weighed something like 30 to 60 pounds, depending on the individual.
Tail here. Wait for just a second. Yeah, there you go. Okay, here we go. Bringing you the tail.
Okay, and as much as I disagree with Ryan's whole presentation, and I'll just say ethos here, I do appreciate the models that he brings on. These seem to be very high quality models, very nice, and they do help to illustrate why he's wrong quite a bit of the time.
These spinous processes, there's these little things that start here, and they turn into my professor Scott Persons. He called these caudal rails, I think is what he called them. Yeah, caudal rods. They kind of turn into these long rods that go across here, and they stretch out further. Uh, I I was also taught that the specific name is
So out in Wyoming, I found a Deinonychus skeleton, and I actually got to see one of these middle tail vertebrae, half embedded in the rock, just a perfect cross section of it. Uh, I got a picture somewhere. I kind of want to show it since I actually found it. So give me just a moment because I gotta send it to myself. Uh, this will be really quick, but I just kind of want to show it because it's cool. Do, 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 do. Uh, Almost there. Do, 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 do. Again, sorry for the pause. Hmm, there you are. Okay, now I just gotta send it to myself really quick. Do, 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 do. Okay. Ba, 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 ba. Okay. Yeah. So this is a Deinonychus tail vertebra, just embedded into the rock. So the vertebra is going down into the rock. There's also a little bit of bone up here. It might be part of the hip. I'm not 100% sure. The skeleton was kind of oriented weird. But yeah, that is a cross section of a Deinonychus tail vertebra right there. And also, just because I like to show it, also one of the claws I found, which there's not really many other claws like this in the Cloverleaf formation. Hand for scale. Uh, yeah. Anyway, I do find it cool how even in this cross section you can see those processes he's talking about. Uh, little illustration there. As a hello, petite flower. Okay, where are we going with this, Ryan? Where are we going with the side processes?
called the pre-zygopophyses. So these rods go down there and they stiffen the tail. Now, Dr. Persons is a bird to dinosaur believer, or dinosaur to bird believer. He believes in that connection, but he also often will do some honest, great research that kind of contradicts that paradigm. And he'll be honest about it. He did one on muscle structure and the way that it attaches. And he did this on this one, and he showed that he still thinks this is for the balancing of the raptor, so that it can swing from side to side, but the way it goes up and down is affected, and he thinks it's for helping it pivot and turn so he can run faster. Hence that leg proportion and the way the femur is. That's why the coelurosaurs can run faster than the other ones.
So, so I would have to actually read Pearson's work or reach out to him. I could possibly do that. Um, so here's the thing: the way dromaeosaurs' tails moved, they were restricted in one axis or another. We have a complete articulated velociraptor that shows the tail curving like vertically but stiff horizontally. Could be different for different species. I know this tail is specifically for Dromaeosaurus, though I'm sure most of this is reconstruction, because I don't think we have too much of Dromaeosaurus. That could be wrong. Anyway, with Dromaeosaurus, though, most of the muscle attachment would be down here near the base. The rest was pretty free of muscle attachments. But if you look at our feathered dromaeosaurs, which we do have quite a few of, they have these huge tail fans near the tip. And it has been proposed, though I don't know how well supported it is, that the extra stiffening in the latter half of the tail might have been to help hold up that feather fan or move it around as like a pseudo pygostyle, which is the hardened nub of bone at the end of a bird's tail. Again, don't know how well supported that is in modern day, but that has been floated as a hypothesis before. And I think it roughly makes sense. A big frond of feathers is gonna flop around if you don't reinforce it. Also, hello Spielcob and other fellow carbon-based life forms. Also, I will note Ryan says that uh, Pearson's work contradicts birds being dinosaurs. I don't know what he means by that specifically. My guess, and this is just a guess because I have not read Pearson's work, or sorry, is it Pearson or Persons? I've not read his work. My guess is that his work shows a gradient between more basal and more derived theropods, and Ryan is calling that a contradiction, which would fit with everything else he has done.
Uh, those rods are supposed to be involved in helping do that. Well, Microraptor has those rods. Yes, so does Rhamphorhynchus and other creatures, but there's a
Rhamphorhynchus is a pterosaur. Not only is Rhamphorhynchus a pterosaur, I don't know if that's true. And I'm trying to find a good picture of it that isn't by the pterosaur guy. If you know, you know. Uh, but yeah, Rhamphorhynchus is a pterosaur. It's not a dinosaur. However, it does have a long, bony. It has a long, bony tail with a fan at the end of it. So I honestly would not be that surprised if it did have ossified tendons. Um, okay, let's see where this goes. Okay, don't know that site. Up. Let's just try to look for tail vertebrae. So I am seeing illustrations that show Rhamphorhynchus with very elongated zygapophyses, which zygapophyses are they're these side branches that you see up here on the vertebrae, typically for reinforcing the tail. I'm seeing illustrations of Rhamphorhynchus with elongated zygapophyses, like a dromaeosaur, but I'm not sure what those are based on. You know what? When in doubt, go to Wikipedia. Wikipedia does say that it had a tail stiffened with ligaments, which, again, not surprised. Because, and I'll show a picture here in just a minute. But, yeah, mm, okay. Yeah, I'll just show a picture of it from Wikipedia here. Uh, yeah, Rhamphorhynchus had a very long tail with a kind of weather vane tip. Although apparently there was some variation between species and individuals, which is kind of interesting. I would not be surprised to learn that this thing had stiffening rods along the length of the tail. Um, but okay. I'm not sure why he's bringing it up, to be honest. Let's go back a second.
To be involved in helping do that. Well, Microraptor has those rods. Yes, so does Rhamphorhynchus, and
Right, he's mentioning that it has those stiffening rods. Yeah, they would help stiffen the tail. And this is not a feature we are using to say that Velociraptor is a bird. And I'm going to reiterate that again. Very few people are saying that Velociraptor is a bird. There's a possibility it had flighted ancestors, because that's an emerging hypothesis within dromaeosaurids, or with dromaeosaurids, that they might have had flying ancestors. But that does not make it a bird. It is a close relative of birds, but not a bird. It is definitely a dinosaur, as are birds.
other creatures, but there's a difference in how they are used and how they are connected. The the Microraptors start at the fourth or fifth vertebrae, so they're real close down there, and that changes how the muscles are attached, which I'll show in just a second. Versus on the raptors, actual dinosaur ones like Velociraptor, it doesn't start till the 10th or 11th. It's way back. So
Yes, it does. There's another difference between those animals. One weighs at least 10 times more than the other and is fully terrestrial. That means it's going to be running a lot more, and it has a lot more weight to move around. It's going to need bigger muscle attachment points. It cannot be built like a tiny bird. Or it cannot be built like a tiny dinosaur. It has to be built like a small dinosaur. There is a difference. Just like how there are differences in the proportions of domestic cats and a tiger. There is a big difference in scale there, so the skeletons have to be different to compensate. That does not mean they're not both cats, and that does not mean that these things are not both dinosaurs.
they have a much more flexible tail. It's a different use of it, and their function is different as well. These are evolutionists who are saying this. Okay, so I take them.
Yes, we are saying that their forms and functions are different because they are different animals with very different lifestyles. But inherently, the anatomy is almost the same. It's a difference of scale and of subtle details, like small details that you are picking at, Ryan.
Their understanding of that as correct on that. And here's the other part of this. So when you connect it with the hip, these ones that are sticking out, these are called the chevrons. This is for muscle attachment. And in the birds, like Microraptor, they attach right in here in the pelvis. Okay, they attach right into the pelvis because that's all that it needs to. Because remember,
in Microraptor, the muscles attach to the pelvis, yes, but they also attach to the tail. They do go out into the tail. And again, as we go towards birds, we see a gradient of those muscles moving more towards the hips, especially as the hips grow in proportion to the rest of the animal. And the tail shrinks because birds, in general, lose their tail, except for a little nub, because that's how they evolved. Dromaeosaurs did not fully lose their tail, although the flying ones did get smaller tails. Also, hello, Dutch tunicate.
on a bird, their center of gravity is not at the hips, it's at the knees. So the way their tail attaches, it's back here in the hips, it does not attach up to their legs. Their
In dinosaurs, the center of mass is roughly where the knees are. That is a dinosaur thing, not a bird thing. Non-avian theropods just have a bit of extra weight back here that shifts their center of mass backward. And again, if you attach a plunger to a chicken's butt, watch what happens.
Center of gravity, their weight is on their knees. In fact, birds have patellas, they have knees. Dinosaurs do not. They have something called the nemial crest. But anyway, you can see that difference. Well, the argument
I believe the nemial crest is just a feature of all femurs, though I could be wrong. Like I think that's yeah, that's just a feature of is it the tibia or the femur? Okay, it looks like it's the tibia. Like that's just a feature of vertebrate anatomy or tetrapod anatomy.
for Velociraptor being a bird is, well, the way the muscles will attach. Now, see, dinosaurs, their powerful walking motion. Stick that back on there. They would only attach right here if it was a bird. But dinosaurs have something right here on their leg called the fourth trochanter. And if the muscle, if that is there, that means the muscles come down and attach to it because it walks upright on its leg. It's for walking. It's for the higher up it is, makes it more for sprinting. The further down it is for long distance. So like the difference between a sprinter and a long distance runner. And that's what allows your four-legged ones, your grazers will have one down here so they can keep walking for longer distances for grazing. But these guys.
Okay, so the fourth trochanter. I believe, did go over this earlier in the presentation, but it would have been a while ago. So I'm going to show some pictures here. Let's go with something big. Let's do a T-Rex femur. Exterior view. Let's show this feature on something obvious. Here. So this is a T-Rex femur. This bump, this massive bump here, is the fourth trochanter. You can see it really well from a side view, about a third of the way down the length of the femur, right? This is a modern chicken femur. And while the anatomy is not exactly the same, you can probably see a lot of similarities between this femur and this femur, including, and this is the posterior view, this is from behind where the fourth trochanter is on a T-Rex, this prominent ridge of bone on the back of the femur. Now, it's not as easy to see in all chickens. Some chickens, especially bigger ones, have a more prominent ridge than others, but it still often comes up to a little bump here. That is the chicken's fourth trochanter. They still have it. It's just not as prominent in something that weighs upwards of 8 tons. Because a chicken weighs a little less than that. So its muscle scars are going to be, its muscles are smaller. So the muscle attachment points are smaller. This is the Velociraptor versus Microraptor thing again, just on a more dramatic scale. Again, this ridge of bone here. Sorry. So this is the view of the bone of the femur from the outside. So if you're looking at the side of the skeleton, this is the view you would have. This is the view from behind, where it's a little harder to see the fourth trochanter, but it's about here. This also isn't the best quality picture. But on our chicken, you can still see a bit of a bump here and the corresponding ridge on the back side of the femur. It's still there. It's not as prominent, but it's there. Also, sorry, this is I think this is a left femur, and I think this one is this a left femur? No, this is a right femur, so the images are kind of flipped. But yeah, you can still see the same features. It still has a fourth trochanter. Interesting how that works. Anyway, Ryan, where were we?
A little farther for running. And we found my friend Joel Tay, who I mentioned last time, and I have found some velociraptor specimens. We've taken pictures of them that have that fourth trochanter there that shows the muscle attachment is just like a dinosaur and not like a bird. Whereas on Microraptor, it's the opposite. It's just like a bird and not like a dinosaur. We can keep going on. The hands are part of the deal. The dinosaurs have this little bone right here that's supposedly supposed to allow them to fold their hand a little bit like that. Well, that's fine. That's good. Okay. Well, that's how a bird does it. Some of the birds have that as well. The semi-lunate carpal. Yeah, on the birds, it's a little bit different. It's a
Okay, so now he's talking about a specific bone in the wrist called the semi-lunate carpal. And that's a lot. That's a lot of words, I know. It means half moon carpal, which is a specific bone in the wrist. And as this diagram helpfully demonstrates, the semi-lunate carpal is a feature in Maniraptora, which is a large group of dinosaurs that includes birds, and dromaeosaurs, and oviraptorosaurs, and therizinosaurs. It belongs to a wide group of dinosaurs. And in fact, there's a structure in some early tyrannosaurs that I've seen possibly described as a semi-lunate carpal. I think I've seen it in Dylong. Let me get a picture. Oh, was it not Dylong? Uh, okay. No, not Dylong, Guanlong. Okay, and never mind. And they're okay, and they're not showing it. Okay, never mind. Well, yeah, this paper shows a semi-lunate carpal in Guanlong, which is a very early tyrannosaur, which is interesting if true. I'm not sure how well that's supported. I've not seen that anywhere, or I've only seen that in a couple other places described as a possible semi-lunate carpal. If it is, though, it's interesting. But it's definitely a feature of Maniraptora, at the very least.
completely infused thing right there. Microraptor has one that is it's a little different than Velociraptor, and even then, even if you
It's not very different from Velociraptor. They both have it. They both have it very prominently in their hands.
have that, all that means is it gives you more movement with your hands. If you're something that has arms that can reach the ground, you would want to have that ability, that agility. And so it actually makes sense that Velociraptor would have that kind of semi-lunate carpal.
So the semi-lunate carpal is interesting because it sort of solves an issue that dinosaurs have with their hands, namely that their hands are not very mobile. In most dinosaurs, the hands are on a simple hinge joint, so they can only really move like this relative to the. Here, I'll just turn one hand. They can only really move like this relative to the radius and ulna. It's a hinge. In Maniraptorans, well, it's not entirely just a hinge. There is some motion, but it's mostly just a hinge. In Maniraptorans, specifically, they have the special bone called the semilunate carpal that gives them a greater degree of flexibility like this. And in fact, I can't do what they can do because the semilunate carpal is here and it lets their hand go all the way to tuck against their forearm. It's really dramatic. Um, and again, it's a Maniraptoran trait, but it does give them that extra flexibility. And in birds, it's co opted for use in flapping. It helps them flap, which is something that other dinosaurs couldn't really do very well. But it's not unique to birds.
It it depends on how the ligaments attach. I've talked to physical therapists who to get their understanding about how these things are. And they said, well, just because it has that bone doesn't mean anything. It's how it's attached, how the ligaments would attach, the muscle structure, and everything. So that is not a good.
For the record, if you ask a paleontologist who specializes in how joints move, yeah, they move like that. We have biomechanical studies on how Velociraptor in particular could move its hands in their restricted range of motion, and they would utilize that semilunate carpal.
Indicator of whether it's a dinosaur or not, unless it's a.
I them having okay, Jesus. Okay. Sorry, I just got to make sure I get the full context for what he's saying.
Anything. It's how it's attached, how the ligaments would attach, the muscle structure, and everything. So that is not a good indicator of whether it's a dinosaur or not, unless it's a very distinct difference, like it is between a bird and a dinosaur.
Okay. So, one, a physical therapist's opinion on the motion of a dinosaur wrist is not important to this discussion at all. The I don't put much stock in a hypothetical physical therapist's opinion. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but I don't, Ryan. Not only that, having a semilunate carpal is not a defining feature of Dinosauria. It is a defining feature of Maniraptora, which is a specific group within Dinosauria, among a host of other traits that birds have that nest them within Aviale, within Paraves, within Maniraptora, because it's nested hierarchies. They have other traits that make them definitively dinosaurs, but the semilunate carpal is a feature of a specific group within Dinosauria. Exactly. I wanted to know how the electrical grid works, so I asked a hydrologist. That's a good analogy here. Like it's unrelated, and God, how is that convincing to people? I will never know.
And we can go on, and I'll just go to. So many secular scientists over the years have been like, the evidence is so not there for this that they have stayed away from it or published work on it or just flat out said no, this can't be, this doesn't work. And part of the reason for this is because what is found in the fossil record. So I we started with that.
Hey, there are some paleontologists who are mostly ornithologists who disagree with birds being dinosaurs. And I say some because they are an overwhelming minority within paleontologists, within dinosaur paleontologists specifically. Like to such a so and for clarity, I'm talking in modern day. If you go back to like the 60s, it would have been a much more dramatic split with a lot more people saying no. It was emerging evidence through the 60s, 70s, and beyond that shifted the opinions of the field. The informed opinions of the field, I should specify. Our opinions changed because of new evidence. I have read papers by Fiducia, Lingham Solaire, and some of the other people that he put up on screen. Most of them refuse to deal with the new evidence or they misrepresent it. in many ways. There are very few honest paleontologists who do not already have their heels dug in. Or, sorry, there are not many modern honest paleontologists who think birds are not dinosaurs. And there is very good reason for that. And it's not that we're indoctrinated to think so. The evidence is right there, and it's overwhelming.
The trackway here, this big trackway that I've seen at Black Hills Institute, South Dakota. You have footprints of T-Rex and Monosaurus, Struthiomimus, and birds. Bird footprints with dinosaur footprints? Wait a minute, how is that possible if the dinosaurs are supposed to evolve into birds?
You know, it's funny. You think he cannot go any lower, and yet here we are. Like, on the scale of creationist arguments, he just went from arguing with specific points of anatomy and like anatomical structures and fossil record, and then just if things supposed to evolve into thing, how can things coexist? This is the if humans evolved from monkeys, why are there still monkeys argument. That's what this is. It, you know the answer to this, Ryan, especially considering a lot of the Mesozoic birds you have shown in this presentation come from the Jurassic and early Cretaceous. You know, Ryan. I don't think it requires much more explanation than that. But I will say, cool trackway. That's neat. That's cool. I am otherwise very disappointed. Yeah. How could I live at the same time as my grandparents? How could you live at the same time as your cousin? It's it literally is the monkeys and men question that creationists put forward sometimes. I did not think Ryan would stoop this low, but here we are.
How could the birds be present there? Oh, that's not the only example. Found buried with dinosaurs. Oh, take a look. What all is buried with? With and below, underneath dinosaur fossils. Birds. Tons of them. All throughout. Okay, so the pink highlighted ones are birds, the white ones are dinos, the yellow ones, there's not enough fossil material to really tell what it is. And
Okay. So so pink is birds, yellows he doesn't know what it is, even though some of these are labeled birds, and purple is dinosaurs. I Ryan, we're here again. We are here again, Ryan. Also, interesting that there are none of these birds. Well, okay, no, never mind. He does have something from the Triassic here. Proto-Avis. Hmm. Mhm. Let's see. Mhm. Sorry, I'm just reading through this. Okay, so Proto-Avis, and I'm just latching onto this one because it is taxon, or sorry, because it's a Triassic taxon and very little else here is from the Triassic. Seems to be a jumbled hash of bones that were all found in one area. So it could be a chimera. Chimera is when you mix fossils from different individuals and call it the same thing. This has happened with Dakota raptor, which is a dromaeosaurid that a dromaeosaurid from the Hell Creek Formation. It was described based on a bunch of bones, some of which turned out to be from a turtle. And this is just Wikipedia, so grain of salt, yada yada. But it seems to be a mixture of bones. So that's interesting that he includes it. Let's see what else we have here. Stereotis, Javaneva, Exodus. Okay, here's Caudipteryx as a bird again. Archaeopteryx and Anchiornis as birds again. Interesting. Anyway, yeah, this is again, sorry, off on a tangent because I saw a Triassic bird. But this is just, it is just the I live at the same time as my cousins thing again. It's just that again. We are saying that birds are a group within Dinosauria. Of course, they're going to coexist with dinosaurs. They're not the descendants of all dinosaurs. Duckbills did not become birds. Tyrannosaurs did not become birds. They are separate groups within a larger clade, like how bovids, cervids, and felids are all groups within Mammalia. So too are birds, tyrannosaurs, and hadrosaurs groups within Dinosauria. They can coexist. I am deeply disappointed here.
So you have them buried with and below. Now, the dinosaurs are supposed to evolve into the birds. How can the birds be buried underneath of them?
Also, I will mention here because we're about halfway through the material we have to cover, so maybe we'll finish this up in less than 3 hours. But we do have a super chat goal going right now, folks. If we hit 10 $5 super chats by the time we hit 3 hours, then we'll be playing a little bit of Ancestors, the Humankind Odyssey, which is a video game based around the evolution of humans. And we'll talk a bit about human evolution too, get off the bird topic, which we've been on for the last month and a half. Could use a little break, right? That is if we hit our super chat goal, we'll go do that. If not, then we'll probably call the stream quits at about 3 hours just to give y'all the maximum time. I will say memberships will also count towards that goal, or just a cumulative amount equal to the super chat goal. And I'm glad you love birds, Dutch Tunicate. I do too, obviously. It's just we have been on this for quite a while, and I do want to have a bit more variety. So next week we will be covering something very different. Unless, we see or unless I see another presentation on birds that really catches my eye. But that's a big if.
That's quite a problem. Again, more of the mixed up fossils and what we see that shouldn't be there if the evolutionary story is true.
Okay, mixed up fossils. Let's go into these. Okay. Dinosaur fossil found in mammal stomach. No, they're separate groups. They can coexist. Small dinosaur in the stomach of a mammal. They can coexist. Also, this might be the same fossil, so different articles on the same fossil. Two compsognathids feeding on Confucius saurids and dromaeosaurids. All of those are separate groups within Theropoda. And then this looks like a dinosaur or something found inside a crocodilian. It is these are all just coexisting groups. These are all separate groups at different times. Mammal species coexisting with dinosaurs does not contradict the evolutionary timeline. It just does not. We have we have basal mammals going back to the early Jurassic. It depends on how you define mammal, but they're either early Jurassic or Triassic, our earliest mammals. If you want to just talk about mammaliforms, that's I think Triassic, maybe latest Permian too. And just like synapsids on the line to mammals, we have going back through the Permian. Like we mammals co-evolved with dinosaurs until the dinosaurs, not counting birds, went extinct. Then mammals took over the megafaunal niches after the megafaunal dinosaurs were gone, with the exception of terror birds, which came later, and other giant bird species, which did eventually evolve, though it took a while. Like it's not a contradiction. It's just not as simple as your grade school book would like you to believe. It's not simple. It's complex. That doesn't make it untrue. I'm sorry that bothers you, Ryan. Also, specifically, the dinosaur fossils found in mammals' stomach and like mammals attacking dinosaurs. There have always been small dinosaurs, and during the early Cretaceous and thereafter, there were like badger sized mammals that could attack a small dinosaur, or dinosaur babies, or dinosaur eggs. This is not a contradiction. It's just animals being animals. It's not much different from a modern badger eating a modern chick or a modern bird, which happens all the time, or like a fox doing it, which might be a better analogy. Also, I apologize for this. I will be right back, folks. I'll be back in less than a minute. So I do agree. I also like turtles. I'll be back. And you know what? I can do this. So I think I'll play a little bit of music for you guys. Um, let's do Feeding the Ducks. That seems fitting. You know what? I gotta say, this is kind of funky. I like this. I really hope it does not get the stream taken down. Let's see, my audio was on for a few seconds. Yeah, I was sorry. I was saying, I was gonna play a bit of music uh, before coming back. I'm doing this through StreamYards, and they have uh, a few little songs that you can play. Yeah, okay, they are royalty free. That's good. Um, yeah, that was feeding the ducks. That was kind of funky. I like that actually. That's not bad background noise. Anyway, where were we, Ryan? How does this contradict the evolutionary timeline?
We could go on that, but let's cover the feather thing real quick, and then we'll be done. Because I've been going way too long about this. Can you tell I like the anatomy? I'm a nerd. Okay, so in the movies, they have them living in snow because cold-blooded reptiles would love that. Oh wait, in the movies they're warm-blooded, right? Well, if they need a
Okay. So yes, in one of the recent Jurassic World movies, they did show dinosaurs in the snow. And yes, they are warm-blooded. There are so many problems with this Pyroraptor design, I will just say. Uh, it is it is arguably one of my least favorite dino designs in the movies, but I do appreciate it does have feathers. It just has so many problems. Not the least of it swimming in freezing cold water is really weird. But this was like a nod in the movies to how like dromaeosaurs should have feathers because they should have feathers, and we know this. Pyroraptor here almost certainly had feathers because so Pyroraptor is an issue um, because it's a very fragmentary genus. We have very little of its anatomy. We have enough to know that it is a paravian, but it could belong to several groups within that group. It could be a dromaeosaur. It could be something called an unenlagine, which might be birds. Could be a bird. Could be a troodontid. Could be a lot of things. It is it's a problematic taxon because it's very fragmentary. But he's going to complain that they're shown as warm-blooded, which, as we have been over before in this mini series, might as well call it, they should be. They would have been warm-blooded.
day worm will put feathers on it. I was teaching at a VBS in Barnesville, Oklahoma. This young man, 5th grade, where he said, "Ooh, ooh, ooh, ooh." Like, yeah. He's like, "The Nanosaurus." Like, Nanosaurus. I haven't heard that one. There's a new species named every day. I was like, I haven't heard that. Tell me about it. He's like, the dinosaurs. They found it in Alaska, and it was covered in a double layer of down to keep it warm in the winter. I said, after we're done, let's go look it up. We'll pull up the actual paper and look and see what was there. He's like, okay. Hold up. This is the picture that they give of Nanosaurus.
That is a speculative reconstruction of Nanosaurus, yes.
Here's the amount of fossil material that was found.
Yes. So this is Nanosaurus, name meaning the polar bear lizard, which I think is pretty cool. It would have been a mid-sized tyrannosaurid that lived in northern Alaska during the right near the end of the age of the right near the end of the Cretaceous. It would have lived in a fairly cold climate for the Cretaceous. It would have seen snow, at least during some parts of the year. It would have been below freezing. It would have been very, very chilly. Despite that, we have evidence for at least other groups that lived with it, and likely Nanosaurus itself, that it lived in those cold areas year round. Based on that, the fact, I'm just going to say fact, that it was warm blooded because it's a tyrannosaur, and its ancestry, it is very likely that it had feathers, at least during part of the year, to help insulate it. It is very likely that it did. And again, we can say that for a few reasons. One, it was warm blooded. Two, it lived in these really cold areas for for a decent portion of the year. Like this is the Arctic Circle. There would have been a period of the year where there was just no light. It would have been cold. and also because of early tyrannosaurids like Eutyrannus and Dilong, which have bushy feather impressions. Like these things were feathered ancestrally. Some later tyrannosaurids might have lost their fluff, but ancestrally they were fluffy. So it is decently likely that Nanuqsaurus retained that feature. Now, can we say it for sure? No. Nanuqsaurus is pretty fragmentary, but it is a reasonable inference from its evolutionary history and ecology. So, let's see. Nino Servant says, every so often I want to go to a dinosaur museum. I, I recommend it. Um, Depending on where you live, the nearest one might be a couple hours away, but I would highly recommend it. Museums can always use more visitors. And you can always interact with the staff there and ask them questions. Most museum staff are more than happy to answer questions. Speaking as a volunteer here and someone who's worked with museum staff personally, we love it when people ask questions, especially new questions or interesting ones. Just be nice, and we'll be nice to you. Usually, of course, sometimes there'll be jerks, but that's true in every profession. Oh, and apparently we have a hive raid. Hello, hello, folks, and hello, Bree, if you are here. I imagine you just finished streaming, but if you'd like to hop on, you are more than welcome. And yeah, hello, a goddess, and everyone else. Uh, this is interesting. Dutch Tunicate says, at the Minnesota Science Museum, they have an exhibit where you can race a digital T-Rex and see if you can outrun it. That's really cool. Um, and I'm not surprised you got eaten. Um, like, no offense to you there, but I'm not surprised you got eaten. T-Rex is interesting. We're not 100% sure if it could run, but its walking pace was probably at least 5 or 6 miles an hour, and it could keep that up for hours at a time. Not only that, it could almost certainly at least fast walk at a pace of 12 to 13 miles an hour. Again, probably for quite a long period of time. So even if you could outrun it initially, unless you're a marathon runner, it could probably catch up to you pretty quick. T-Rex is scary. Yeah, hello, Sapphire Plushy Sorceress, and others. Hello, hello. Anyway, I guess we're going to hear more complaints about Nanuqsaurus, which again, fragmentary, but pretty cool Tyrannosaur. Because again, it's from Alaska, from a pretty cold area. Pretty cool.
That's it.
Literally.
That's what was found of Nanuqsaurus in the jaw. And guess how many feathers are on it? None. And I showed him that. And I showed that's how a lot of fossils, how a lot of dinosaurs are made. Just one or two bones, and that's it. And they'll name a whole new species just so they get their name published.
Okay, I will say sometimes this is true. Like sometimes someone will propose a new species or new genus just to get it published. Sometimes people will. However, where we draw the line between different species and genera is a fuzzy boundary to an extent, especially when you're working with fossil taxa. Like, you can't test the biological species concept. You can't see if two individuals could interbreed or not. So you basically just have to go off the anatomy. And it's hard because, like, a lion and a tiger, their skeletons are almost identical. You have to be an expert in felids to be able to tell the difference between a lion and a tiger skeletally, even though we mostly consider them different we mostly consider them different species. Though there is some level of interbreeding, it is limited. Like, so there are boundaries, and some people draw the boundaries with fossil taxa at different points. Like, they'll say, hey, this has this number of differences. I think it's different enough to call it a new species. Someone else will say it's different enough to call it a new genus. It just depends. And especially with very fragmentary animals, it's even tougher to tell. Like, it's even harder because you only have so much to work with. Like, Nanuqsaurus is just a few bits of the skull and teeth. That's it. But there are enough features to set it apart from other tyrannosaurids. Specifically, I believe Nanuqsaurus has enough for us to tell it is a tyrannosaurine, which is a specific group within Tyrannosauridae. Actually, I can look this up with one of the more recent analyses. Let's see here. Okay, so this is on Wikipedia, but these, oh god, this is going to be a pain. Um, these taxonomies come from a, sorry, these taxonomies come from a paper describing Nanotyrannus as its own genus, which just happened last year. So here are Nanotyrannosauridae. Here's where they would be. I'm just looking to see where they have Nanuqsaurus. If they have it, I don't know if they included it because it's so fragmentary. Um, okay, doesn't. Guitars, change rails. Um, okay, so never mind. It does not look like they have Nanuqsaurus in here, but I'm pretty sure it has historically been recovered as a tyrannosaurine. Okay, yeah. So here is the page for Nanuqsaurus, and it is within the Tyrannosaurinae. Keep in mind, this publication is from 2020, so it's a few years out of date. But that's where it is. It is within Tyrannosaurinae. That means that it is the only Tyrannosaurine to be known from that far north, and it has features that set it apart from all of the other Tyrannosaurines over here. It is different from Teratophonius, Dynamoterror, Lithranax, Thanatothyristes, Daspletosaurus, Zuching tyrannus, Tarbosaurus, and T. rex. They are separate. It is enough to be considered separate. So it is not an Albertosaurine, which are the only other Tyrannosaurs found farther north, or at least that far north, I think. So it is a unique genus within Tyrannosaurinae. So it is probably distinct. And considering it is fragmentary, we reconstruct it based on its closest relatives, taking into account its ecology and evolutionary history, meaning we have a medium sized tyrannosaurine in the far north in a family that has a history of being fluffy, at least ancestrally. So, illustrating it with some fluff is completely reasonable. All that to say, it's fine to show it being fluffy.
It's like, so no feathers were found with it. He left there though, still not sure which.
And yes, we got on this because Ryan does not like that it is shown with feathers. I'm sorry, but we have tyrannosauroids that are roughly Nanuqsaurus size that are fluffy. C. Eutyrannus.
Which you could trust.
In fact, depending on some reconstructions, Eutyrannus might actually be bigger than Nanuqsaurus, but I think Nanuqsaurus was recently reconstructed as bigger. We used to think it was like a dwarf Tyrannosaurid, um, but I think that was from reconstructing it as an Albertosaurine rather than a Tyrannosaurine. Listen, Tyrannosaur taxonomy is complicated when you get into individual genera, especially within the last year. And Dutch Tunicate says the polar areas in the Cretaceous fascinate me. They were still very cold, but much more like the boreal region today that still had forests. Yes, that's how Alaska was. It still would have had the Arctic Circle dark months of the year, uh, but it wasn't as cold as today. It was habitable by more than like reindeer. And we actually have like thriving ecosystems that far north. They probably experienced some snow, but it probably would have been more similar to like the northern US or like southern Canada than the tundra that it is today. Or maybe not tundra, but something like that. So Chile probably had snow, probably had snow drifts. You had to have some insulation to survive or be very big. Um, And like, what do we find up there? We don't find any crocodilians. That's a big thing. I think we find very few, if any, turtles either. Which turtles can survive colder temperatures, but they can't survive super cold temperatures. Same with crocodilians. We have tyrannosaurids, we have dromaeosaurs, and we have hadrosaurs. We have a species of Edmontosaurus up there, which used to be its own thing, and I'm sad it's no longer. Uh, so so there's a big bone bed up in northern Alaska. That's just a ton of Edmontosaurus, like juvenile Edmontosaurus, and one weird Lambeosaurine that's just one weird other thing that's just mixed in with them. But most of it is Edmontosaurus. When they were initially described, they were called their own genus, called Ugrunaluk, which means like ancient grazer in the local language, which I think is really cool. I like that paleontology is starting to incorporate more of local languages where fossils are found. Nanuqsaurus is actually another example of that. It is the local word for a polar bear lizard. So it's cool. The Edmontosaurus were originally called Ugrunaluk, but a big paper came out that demonstrated that all the features that made it distinct simply seemed to belong to a specific age group of Edmontosaurus, like the broader genus Edmontosaurus. So it was subsumed into the larger Edmontosaurus collective, which I think is sad, especially for the name. But it helped illuminate a period of Edmontosaurus life history that we didn't have very good insight into previously, because we just didn't have many specific animals from that specific age range. Then we found the bone bed. Very, very cool bone bed. I cannot remember the name of it right now, but there was a time where I was going back and forth with a creationist about it, and it was aggravating, to say the least.
Bible or evolution? Because he had these dinosaur books that said birds evolved from dinosaurs, which the Bible says, no, there's no evolution. In fact, we have birds made on day 5 and land creatures, dinosaurs, reptiles on day 6. It's the exact opposite order. See,
I've said it before and I'll say it again. There are plenty of Christians that find a way to reconcile their faith with the evidence. You not being able to do so is a you problem. And it is sad. It is actually sad. But creationists get hung up on this issue because it's tied up with a whole lot of other things.
why this is a struggle, why this is important. Because we come across people, is it really a big deal? It is for young people. It's a huge deal whether they can trust what God said, the eyewitness who was there to see creation in history, or this evolutionary scheme that is trying to make them not believe.
Evolution does not care whether you believe or not. That is a matter of faith, not a matter of science. These are two separate things. Creationists mixing this up is a more recent thing than the history of evolutionary biology. In fact, I would highly recommend Gutsick Gibbons' 4-hour-long documentary on the emergence of the field of paleontology and evolutionary biology to get more insight into this. It's absolutely fantastic. It's a very long documentary because it was made by Erica, but it's very in-depth, very good, very well-sourced. Highly recommend.
That's why we deal with this. When I joined the ministry, I didn't have to deal with this near as much as I do now, because this is a primary effective tool that's being used to convince young people not to believe the Bible. And when you look at the evidence, it's interesting. St. Louis Science Center, I grew up near there, and so someplace I visited, their big diorama there of the T-Rex, one of the most overweight T-Rexes I've ever seen, but that's besides the point.
I will agree with that. That is a chunky T-Rex.
They've updated their signs, and they got this T-Rex here, and they put some feathers on it, on the top of his head, and his back, and on his tail. And then it says this on the sign: feathered or scaled, did T-Rex dazzle other dinos with a rainbow of feathers? And look down here. In the small print, fossilized skin of T-Rex and relatives show no clear signs of feathers. Nope, not again. This is the Atrociraptor. I've got a toy of this. Right here. Found this toy. It's covered in feathers, see? What was found? Just this part of the skull. That's it. Here's the actual fossil. Guess how many feathers? None. But and here's how it always reads. This is how it always, and I've got all kinds of, see, they put feathers on them. Put feathers on them. It's in books, it's in movies, it's in toys. I don't even know.
Hey, again, that specific taxa does not have feathers preserved because it is a part of the skull, and I don't believe it was preserved in a type of rock that would readily preserve feathers. Feather preservation requires very specific conditions because feathers are delicate structures that decay not as easily as some other structures, but it still decays pretty readily. It's part of why, like, we don't have eyes preserved, at least complete eyes preserved for any dinosaur, but we know they had eyes. Most dinosaur fossils don't have skin impressions, but we know they had skin. With fragmentary taxa, we have to use inference from more complete related organisms. Like, here's the thing. Even if he doesn't believe in the broader web of evolution, we know he believes in some variety of evolution because he thinks birds are a created kind and specific dinosaur groups are a created kind. Atrociraptor is a dromaeosaur, meaning it is probably in the same kind as things like Sinornithosaurus and a bunch of other a bunch of other genera that have feathers preserved, including Microraptor, by the way, but he has a problem with that. Like, it's just because we don't have feathers preserved for Atrociraptor specifically does not mean it didn't have feathers. It's more likely for it to have feathers than for it not to have feathers. So most reconstructions have feathers. I'm sorry that bothers you. With science, we follow the preponderance of evidence. Also, Scientific Origins says they were on SFT on Thursday. Well, I hope you had fun. I've been on a couple debates on Standing for Truth's channel. It's been interesting. I've joined a few other live shows in the past. I've kind of been debating joining a few more recent ones. I'm not sure. I might, though. Could be fun.
What's wrong with this? Is supposed to be a velociraptor. Look at him, he's trying to play the piano. That's terrible. This one at least has the hands right. Yeah, but the feathers. So they're in it with their toys, with their storybooks, with their magazines, their dinosaur books, their television programs, their movies. They're showing this all the time. Every tyrannosaur that has ever been found with skin impressions or preserved skin, it's always pebbly. In fact, the Albertosaurus I showed you was one of the ones they found differentiated scales, just like like a bunch of other reptiles. It's always scales. So where do they put the feathers? Any place they haven't specifically.
Okay, so one, it's true. All Tyrannosaurus skin impressions we have show scales. Did T-Rex have feathers? As a baby? Probably. As an adult? Probably not. Or they were very sparse. Like, let's be clear here. We do not have a complete mummy of T-Rex. We don't. We have skin impressions from some parts of the body. Now, how do I put this? If you just want to say tyrannosaurs broadly did not have feathers, that's not true because we do have early tyrannosauroids with feathers, like Eutyrannus and Dilong. You cannot discount those animals because they have features that are definitively tyrannosauroid. Like they have features that are only found within tyrannosaurs. So we know that tyrannosaurs were ancestrally feathery. That some individual genera might have lost feathers is not a problem. Like that can happen. There are birds that are more fluffy than others today. It's not an issue. And especially when you get big, heat loss is a very, very important problem. That's why in modern day, elephants have very little hair, at least compared to something like a mouse. It covers much less of their body because they are much bigger, they have a lot more heat they have to dump constantly. Especially when things get big, they lose a lot of those coverings. Though they can still retain some of it. Elephants have very hairy heads and backs still. And in fact, if you look at some modern reconstructions of T-Rex, like in Prehistoric Planet, they are almost all covered in scales, except for like a very thin feather mane on the top of the body, which is definitely plausible. Like, it's definitely possible. Let's see. Let's see here. Scientific Origin says no, not. They weren't on SFT. They debated Donnie and Sam on Raging Tomato debates on if the biblical Adam and Eve existed. So let me guess. Sam led with his presumptive BS that the Bible is obviously true and you require the Bible to form your own worldview. And if you reject the Bible, you have no basis for truth, and therefore you cannot know anything. That's how Sam almost always debates, and it's infuriating. That's why I don't talk to him anymore. I'm guessing Donnie went into genetics, and he mixed up the dates for. Called it. And I'm guessing Donnie mixed up the dates for Y chromosome Adam and mitochondrial Eve, saying they lived at the same time, because he does that often. Hey, perfect. I know these guys. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Um, yeah, I don't really want to debate Donnie. I think he's fine as a moderator, but I don't really want to debate him because he's very squirrely. And the Donnie Deals fallacy is a real thing. Uh, it's a real thing. Sapphire Plushy Sorceress says, just replace all of this with globes, and it's one for one with Flurf argumentation. Yeah, Young Earth Creationist talking about dinosaurs. Yeah, it's pretty similar, unfortunately. Scientific Origin says I'm a prophet. I've just dealt with a lot of Sam and Donnie's BS. Uh, and Sam does the same thing every time, regardless of what you throw at him. He always goes by the same playbook because he has nothing else and he's an idiot. He can't argue anything else. He has to go with his presumptive BS. That's all he does. Hmm. Donnie at least uses different arguments, but he cycles them. He cycles them back and forth, and does he does one, you push on it, he does the other, you push on that, he goes back. That is what Donnie does with every debate, and he'll do that for the course of the debate, so he doesn't actually fight you on one thing at a time. He burns the clock by evading. It's kind of like what Kent does, except it's a little more competent because Kent's an obvious blowhard. But yeah,
Found a spot of scales there. But then once they do, they take the feathers off. They keep updating how many feathers are on these things because we keep finding scales every time. And when you read the headlines about it, it's like, oh, yes, the world's only fossil T Rex is covered in scales, not feathers. And oh, yes, that had scaly.
okay, well, I'll say that's a clickbait article because we have multiple T Rex skin impressions. And yes, again, all of the T Rex skin impressions we have are all scaly. That does not mean that all Tyrannosauroids were scaly.
Skin, it wasn't covered in feathers. They were just, you hear the disappointment, so sad. It was covered in scales, not feathers. You know, they keep it. But have we given up? Oh, no, don't.
Okay. In this paper, I have looked up this paper. Yeah, I believe this is the paper I've read. And yep, it references Tyrannus in the first paragraph of the introduction. So it acknowledges, hey, we have this big Tyrannosauroid. It's definitely fluffy. We have these later ones that are not. They must have lost feathers along the way. That's what that paper is talking about. And let's see. Bobaton asks, can he quit yelling? I mean, he's nearing the end of his presentation. He's excited and he's trying to nail in the conspiracy angle because that's basically all he has to go on at this point. So he's going to start yelling. He's getting passionate. It's part of the. This is not saying anything against preachers in general, but it's part of the preacher shtick. Like you build up in intensity as it goes on to keep the audience engaged and try to help drive your point home. It's just how it goes. It's not even really a preacher thing. It's just like a presentation thing. It's normal to get this way if you build through a presentation. I could say that because I've given a few, but yeah.
Lose hope. My professor, Scott Persons, University of Alberta paleontologist, colleagues examined new skin impressions taken from T Rex, okay? And they found the pattern among the Tyrannosaur kin. They all, how many? All had skin textured with small, pebbly scales and not fuzzy plumage.
Yeah, okay. So if you guys pause and take time to read through this article, because this is not a paper. This is an article reporting on a paper. You can see they mention an interview with Persons here. So Scott Persons, I guess the lead author. And yeah, they're talking about, hey, early Tyrannosauroids had feathers. Later Tyrannosauroids did not. It's probably a case that as they got bigger, they lost feathers because they had to lose heat. That's what this says. That's a reasonable hypothesis that seems to stack with the evidence. It also helps that T Rex lived in a much hotter climate than Eutyrannus. I brought up this animal before. Eutyrannus, early Tyrannosauroid. Imagine a T Rex crossed with an Allosaurus. That's kind of how it looks. And it's covered in fluff, big, long, poofy feathers, kind of like an emu, like long, fluffy feathers. Eutyrannus lived in a much cooler climate than T Rex did. Reconstructions of the environment suggest it might have been a high altitude environment. Eutyrannus might have lived in a fairly mountainous area that was fairly cool, at least during some parts of the year. And the three Eutyrannus individuals that we have, because we have three of them, two of which were found with their tails literally touching, which is so cool. Anyway, all three individuals have feather impressions. So it's possible they were killed during the cool part of the year, or they just had these feathers on all the time. We don't know for sure. But they did have these big, fluffy, long feathers over different parts of their body. But the paleo environment reconstructions show that the average yearly temperature was probably similar to somewhere like Maine, which, if you don't know, the East Coast gets a lot of snow during some parts of the year. It gets really cold, even if it is warm and humid in some other parts of the year. T-Rex, on the other hand, lived in a humid, tropical climate. It lived in a very, very, very warm area year round, like actually tropical or subtropical. The closest analogy we have is somewhere like the Florida Everglades, super toasty all year round. A big animal like T-Rex, if it was covered in fluff like Eutyrannus, would cook itself alive. It had to lose the fluff as an adult. Juveniles, they could probably get away with being fluffy still. In fact, it's probably likely they were fluffy just to help conserve heat, because when you're small, it's harder to hold on to heat. But it's like if you take a skinny kid and a fat guy to the Everglades, one of them's going to be a lot more sweaty and dying in the heat. It's that simple. Yeah. Stop defeating your own point and your own source. Yeah, that's kind of what Ryan's been doing this entire time. Dune also says they love Ancestors: The Humankind Odyssey. Well, I will say, because we have gotten a few more people, if we hit our super chat goal, which is set for just over an hour from now, we will be playing a little bit of Ancestors: The Humankind Odyssey at the end of this. It is a game focused on human evolution, where you go from an ancestral ape to the earliest species of Homo. Like, you make that transition and you discover different technologies and evolutionary adaptations along the way. It's a very cool game, very fun game, and it would give us a chance to talk about human evolution for a bit. Uh, but I have it as a super chat goal because we will probably hit 3 hours before we're done with this stream. So yeah, if we hit our goal, we'll go do that for a little bit, and then we will call it quits. Otherwise, we're probably going to call it quits once this presentation is over. Though if we might finish the presentation before hitting the 3 hour mark, in which case we will go into their Q&A a bit, because there is some interesting stuff in the Q&A. Otherwise, we'll stop at 3 hours. If you guys wanted to go longer, please consider donating. It does help the channel. It helps me justify taking time to do this show. And I will say also memberships and stuff will count towards the total. Let's see. Dune Sandwing is asking, I think referring to the temperature levels I was talking about earlier, is this like why woolly mammoths have fur and elephants have thinner fur? Yes, that is exactly right. Our modern elephants have basically bristles and a little bit of fuzz on the top of their body. It's easier to see on juveniles. Baby elephants are pretty hairy. Adult elephants are not. Mammoths or woolly mammoths, of course, were covered in fluff. They were very, very fluffy, along with a bunch of other cold adaptations, which are actually really interesting. Really interesting. Anyway, Ryan, what are you going to say about your source?
Multiple patches, multiple places. Pretty clear. At least the majority of T-Rexes not covered in feathers. But then here's the explanation. Well, it's possible, of course, that T-Rex pebbly complexion may be the exception, not the rule. There's plenty of evidence that early tyrannosaurs had feathers. Where? Down in their heart.
No, Ryan, if you actually read the paper this is based on, it literally says it in the introduction. It, you know what? Persons, Tyrannosaur, integument. All right, let's take a look at this paper by Scott Person, or sorry, accept cookies. The lead author is Phil Bell. Scott Persons is down here. Oh, Bakker's also on this, and Pete Larson and Phil Curry. Oh wow, okay, they got like all the Tyrannosaur guys on this. Okay. So, Tyrannosauroid integument reveals conflicting patterns of gigantism and feather evolution. Okay. Uh, Recent evidence for feathers in theropods has led to speculations that the largest tyrannosaurids, including Tyrannosaurus rex, were extensively feathered. We describe fossil integument from Tyrannosaurus and other tyrannosaurids, confirming that these large bodied forms possessed scaly reptilian like skin. Body size evolution in tyrannosauroids reveals two independent occurrences of gigantism. Specifically, the large sizes in Eutyrannus and tyrannosaurids were independently derived. Basically, that means that tyrannosauroids evolved big sizes two different times. Once with Eutyrannus and its relatives, and once with later tyrannosaurids. These new findings demonstrate that extensive feather coverings observed in some early tyrannosauroids were lost by the Albian basal to Tyrannosauridae, so lost by the mid-late Cretaceous. This loss is unrelated to paleoclimate, but possibly tied to the evolution of gigantism, although other mechanisms exist. And yeah, like it mentions here, filamentous feathers and some large tyrannosauroids from China have raised the intriguing possibility that similar integumentary structures were widespread throughout the group, even among the largest late Cretaceous tyrannosauroids. This hypothesis has yet to be tested, although it has serious implications for feather evolution, in which the developmental sequence of modern feathers is generally assumed to have been recapitulated in the phylogeny of Coelurosaurian theropods. And yeah, it keeps going, keeps going, keeps going. Filamentous feathers have been described in two tyrannosauroids, both from the early Cretaceous of China, Dilong paradoxus and Eutyrannus wally, which at around 9 meters in length approached the size of some late Cretaceous tyrannosaurids. Yeah, so there you go, Ryan. It's in your source. It is in your source right here, Ryan. Jesus. Let's see. Petite Flower asks, why is he so fixated on T Rex? It's the most famous dinosaur. Yeah, yeah, it's the most famous dinosaur. He's obsessed with T Rex and Velociraptor because they're both big names because of Jurassic Park, not because they're particularly relevant to the evolution of birds, just because they're famous. And yep, Sapphire points out this is indeed a Trojan source. I think Dune Sandvik is saying this because of the colors of the journal, but a cherry flavored Trojan source. Hello, Al. Hope you're doing well. Hello, native atheists. Um, let's see. Al Trucker for 400 joules says eagle. I still don't know how the joule system works, but thank you, Al. And I'm not sure what the eagle is in reference to. It's all right. Native atheist says they don't use condominiums. That I can't talk words. I can't do big words. Petite Flower says I should have made that a super chat. I mean, if you want to, feel free. I can say it in a funny voice if you want me to, because I do those sometimes. Oh, and Sandwing clarifies. I meant because they are cherry picking and it's a Trojan source. Okay. Also, maybe it didn't render properly on my screen. Because I'm looking at it here. Let's see. Huh, weird. I don't see. That's odd. I'm just wondering, was that an emoji owl? Because it's just not rendering for me. Oh yeah, you did. Oh, okay, got it. That's just something that doesn't render in StreamYard, I guess. So Al sent an eagle emoji, not just the word eagle. That would be that was I okay, okay, got it. Boop. Okay. All right. Where were we? Where were we? Don't lose hope about the fluffy T-Rexes, says Ryan.
It's not in the fossil record. It's not found. But maybe the evidence is just more complex than we previously thought. So you'll read. Oh yes, this is one of the feathered dinosaurs. And then you read down further in the article or the description or the papers. Well, no feathers actually found in this one, but it belongs to the group of dinosaurs that we know had feathers.
Except for the papers that describe feathered dinosaurs, which are numerous. We have papers describing feathers from tyrannosauroids, from dromaeosaurids, therizinosaurids. We have feather-like structures in ceratopsians, in Psittacosaurus. We have them in more basal ornithischians. We have one in. We have a paper describing feathers in Canulong, which is an early ornithischian, uh, a relative of Heterodontosaurus, if you've ever heard of that. Weird little gremlin bastard. Um, we have feathers in tons of dinosaurs. Tons of dinosaurs. Oh, and Petite Flower did send a super chat. Thank you. If it wasn't for Trojan sources, I wouldn't have no sources at all. Da da da. The YEC theme song. Yeah, it's not a bad one. It's not a bad one.
Well, which ones did? Everyone you read, it says that same thing. We know they had them. It's just not on this one. Which one did it have? Well, we don't know.
We have dozens of feathered dinosaurs. Non-avian dinosaurs, to be specific. Dozens.
Every time we find these things, and sometimes preserved, preservation of scales, not just fossilized, preserved. That shouldn't happen, right? If they're millions.
Interesting. So you're citing a paper on Carnotaurus. Scaly skin of the abyssosaurid, Carnotaurus sastre from the Upper Cretaceous of Patagonia. Interesting. So yes, Carnotaurus is an interesting animal. It has been known that it has scaly skin impressions since like the 90s when it was first described. And yeah, Carnotaurus appears to have been completely scaly, or at least that's what's preserved. That is a genus in a group that, interestingly enough, we've never found feather impressions for. We've only found scaly impressions with abelisaurs. Unless I'm out of date on that, I could be, but as far as I know, we've only ever found scale impressions. That is a specific lineage of relatively primitive, depending on how you want to use that word, theropods. Oh, interesting. Aunt Jer says the emojis purchased by Jules are usually animations, but it seems YouTube has made it impossible for creators to actually see the animation. It plays in chat as an overlay to the comments. That's interesting and odd. Huh.
Years old. Here was one in 2016. This 6-centimeter piece of amber had a tail in it. It was a little bony, kind of like microraptors, right? And had feathers. Oh, there it is, feathered dinosaur tail. You read about it, says, yeah, the feathers, it looks just like a modern bird when you actually read the paper, but it was still put out there and they still claimed it was a dinosaur. I have looked and looked.
The feathers are comparable to the contours of many modern birds. Comparable does not mean the same. They are
And look
comparable.
for follow-up studies on this. Anything. This is never mentioned. It was all
Never mentioned. Okay. Well, luckily enough, his source here shows the specimen number. Let's see. DIP V 15103. Dinosaur tail trapped in amber. See, it's been getting consistent news ever since it was first discovered. That's interesting, interesting, interesting. Uh, okay. Feathered dinosaur tail with primitive plumage trapped in mid Cretaceous amber by Xing et al. Citations. Okay. References. Let's see. Can we see what publications have cited this? Let's see here. It's like it's published in Science Direct. Got to verify I'm human real quick. Okay. Citation, capture, boiling images, news media references, details. Okay. So. Yeah, it's been mentioned in numerous blogs, news articles, shared all over social media. It did make a splash when it was first published. It's been consistently mentioned since in the news, at the very least. I'm not sure if Science Direct lets you see, like, I'm not sure if Science Direct lets you see what other articles reference it. But it definitely hasn't been forgotten. Looks like it might be reference. Oh, PubMed stuff. Yeah, it's been consistently cited in the literature ever since its publication. With some of them as recent as 2022, if not more recent. It hasn't been forgotten. And if we, let's see, I'm going to put the specimen number into Google Scholar just to see what that turns up. Okay, there's the initial publication. There's another publication in 2017 that references it. Response that references it. Yeah. Yeah, no, this has been consistently referenced in other works. Yeah. Yeah, no. So I can't see the full article because it's behind a paywall, but you can see here the specimen number is referenced. So it's been referenced in stuff at least as recently as 2022, if not more recent. Oh, hey, and there's the original lead author on this, Phil Bell. So yeah, no, we have not forgotten about this. It's not been forgotten. It's consistently referenced because it's a cool fossil. So either Ryan doesn't know how to look up specimen number or he's dishonest. I'll let you decide which he's choosing to be right now. Anyway,
all the headlines in 2016 hardly ever mentioned. I never see it mentioned ever again. When given the evidence for feathers on tail, no, not this one. They stay away from it. They will mention, they won't talk about it, but they'll mention, oh yeah.
Oh, Aunt says, I'm guessing to see articles that reference it, copy paste the DOI into the search bar of Sci-Hub. Boop, 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 boop. Let's see, where's the DOI? Okay, DOI, copy link, Science Hub. Oh, is this to see the full article? Does Sci-Hub let you bypass that? Where? Oh God, where did I? Um, let's see. There's the DOI, copy link. Boop, boop. Gives you access to paywall paper to articles. I did not know that. Oh, it's awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Anshare. Um, God, what was the specimen number? Uh, okay. DIPV 15103. Let's control F for that. Yep. Yep. This paper used that specimen in their analysis. Ooh. Look at that. It's a nice illustration of some Tyrannosaurid. Oh, an exemplified non-Maniraptoran theropod. Oh, so this is showing like scales patterns that are commonly found in different areas of the body. That's cool. Ooh, okay, I'm gonna have to play with this more later on. This is cool. Thank you, Aunt Share. Much appreciated. Download paper because your access expires. Okay. Um, I don't. I'm not going to do that right now, but I might later. Thank you. Anyway, I think we're about to talk about the quill knobs on Velociraptor, which are indeed quill knobs. Dune Sandwings, as they have to go, but this made their lunch break. Thank you, Dune. Much appreciated.
We found quill knobs on a velociraptor arm bone. We found the quill knobs. Okay. What are quill knobs? Quill knobs are the anchor points for flight feathers.
They are the anchor points for big feathers, not necessarily flight feathers. In Velociraptor's case, they are probably for what we would call flight feathers. Flight feather just refers to a specific shape of a feather. It does not mean that the animal flies with them. Ostriches have flight feathers. They do not fly, but they have them. It's just a style of feather. And quill knobs mean that the feather anchors to the bone.
Flight feathers, only for flight feathers. So they found these on a velociraptor arm. You're telling me you believe velociraptor flew?
Again, no. The term flight feather refers to a style of feather, a type of feather. Not it does not mean that the animal flies. It's just a type of feather.
No. The explanation of this by Alan Turner and Mark Norell and others for Science Magazine, American Museum of Natural History was Velociraptor descended from flying birds, from birds that flew.
So, from flying ancestors, yes, not necessarily from birds. It is an emerging hypothesis that dromaeosaurs in general might have had flying ancestors, and they are ground-dwelling descendants. We've seen this happen with modern birds in multiple cases. Obviously, there are things like ostriches, rheas, and emus. There's also the dodo. And turkeys, which, while they can fly, they prefer to live on the ground. Like, we have modern birds that have evolved from ancestors that flew more often. This is a similar case with Velociraptor.
Okay, well, I thought Velociraptor was supposed to be the ancestor. The dinosaurs eventually get. Wait a minute, no, dinosaurs are the descendants of birds. Which is it?
Velociraptor is not an ancestor to birds. It is an offshoot that resembles what the ancestors of birds probably looked like based on the fossil evidence.
And here was the other problem. It was on the inside of the arm. It's on the inside of the arm. If you look at it
God, okay.
closely, you'll notice it's the inside of the arm.
That's the wrong bone. Sorry, I gotta. I'm gonna rewind here. Pay attention to what bone he is stroking on. I'm on a full screen, so you guys can see this a little better here. Pay attention to which bone he is stroking on his Dromaeosaurus here.
It's on the inside of the arm. If you look at it closely, you'll notice it's the inside of the arm, not the outside. It's on the opposite side.
That's the humerus. We're not talking about the humerus here. That is not a humerus. This is an ulna. That's this bone down here on the outside of the arm. Oh, holy crap. Okay, no. Okay, so for clarification, I guess in case anyone needs it here, this bone on Velociraptor is the ulna. It is the outer bone on the forearm. And on his Dromaeosaurus here, it's really hard to see, but it's this narrow bone right over here. That is the ulna. He is pointing to the humerus on his model. He doesn't even have the right bone. And he's saying that these knobs are on the inside? No. These quill knobs are on the outer surface of the ulna, right here. The same place they are in modern birds, on their ulnae. Not only did he mix up the bones, he mixed up the orientation of the bones. I think I can understand how he mixed up the orientation of the bones because I think he's mixing up this news about Velociraptor with another dinosaur called Concavenator. Concavenator. So Concavenator is a theropod somewhat related to Allosaurus that was found with quill knobs on its ulna. That's why this illustration has like quilly feathers here. It was found with those quill knobs. Just looking at the fossil, like as it is on the rock slab, it looks like those bumps, so the quill knobs, are on the inside of the arm. That's due to the fossil being distorted after it was deposited. The bones there were rotated out of place, so the outside of the ulna was made to point in. That's why some people in the past have put forward that they might have been muscle attachment points. For Concavenator, specifically, this explanation, the rotated ulna specifically, and the explanation is what makes me think he's mixing up news on two different dinosaurs. And it's absolutely mind-blowing that he thinks this is a point. Like, this is awful. This is horrific. This goes beyond not fact-checking sources. This is just being wrong on a fundamental level on which animal you're talking about. It is unbelievable. It's bad. And by the way, Concavenator, Very cool fossil. By the way, like we have almost the entire animal, very cool dinosaur, but this is just this is bad. And again, he's not even looking at the right bone. He, he's mixing up the humerus with the ulna. That's bad.
And they realize, oh, then are these quill knobs? No, there are several, and I could get you the papers. There are several secular evolutionary, but it's like, no, they're just a muscle attachment spot. That's it. And we find it in other animals. It looks the exact same. So, no.
That is for a concavinator. That is the argument for a concavinator, not velociraptor. And you know why I say that? Because Alan Fiducia thinks velociraptor is a bird. That's one of the great ironies with this. Fiducia thinks velociraptor's a bird.
Dr. John Allen Fiducia is one of the leading guys on this, does not believe in it. He is just attacked all the time because of this. And I've read some of the responses to his work, people who would critique his work. And usually the response is, he's old. He's old. Don't listen to him. Don't pay attention. He's old. His data's out of date. He doesn't know anything. Okay.
We say that because Alan Fiducia is notoriously out of date. When he does work with relevant modern literature, he almost never properly represents it. I'm not gonna call him dishonest because I don't know the man, but he doesn't seem to be arguing with good faith. I'm sorry.
This one right here is usually the prime example for feathers on a dinosaur. This is Sinosauropteryx. I have it in a National Geographic right there. It's the primary one. They show it all the time. This is their example because this one was found and it was like, oh, look, 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 look. It's an actual dinosaur, 100% dinosaur, Sinosauropteryx. And look, it's got this fuzzy stuff. That must be proto-feathers. It's a feathered dinosaur. Woohoo! It's so exciting. It's still used to this day as the example. Dr. Fiducia and several others, the Grattan Longensiler and others are like, can we look under like a microscope, like, scientists do? And as they're getting ready to do that, or they're wanting to do that, and they've done this with several others, they're like, wait, just a second. By the way, you can see the fully perforated acetabulum and the supracetabulum crest on it. It's really cool. Anyway.
You can't see either of those features in this image, but okay.
Like, look closely. You see this line? Let me highlight it in the green there. Oh, that looks like that's the skin impression in the rock, which
that is what Fiducia said when the fossil was first discovered, while looking at low-resolution images of the skeleton. If you actually look at the thing, you can see that the groove he is outlining here is preparation marks. Because, okay, we got this fossil. It was on a rock slab that was split apart. And then we had to do further fossil preparation to actually reveal its features properly. That's how it works. And fossil preparation is like clearing away extra rock that's obscuring the fossil and covering what you expose with a preservative, usually something like a chemical called butvar or something similar. It's cleaning away rock and reinforcing the actual fossil. That line is a preparation line. That's how far they prepared into the surrounding rock. It's not the skin. And we know that because we can see the skin of Sinosauropteryx. It's preserved in some areas. Especially along the top midline of the body, it's pretty close to the skin. like it is in most animals. Weirdly enough, not a lot of animals have like a big pad of flesh above the vertebral column. Some do, some do. Most don't, especially reptiles. It's usually pretty flat against the surface of the body. Sorry, across the surface of the bones. Um, it's like this has been disproven. This claim has been disproven time and time and time again. There are multiple publications on the internal structures of the feathers, of their melanosomes, like organelle structures, cellular, subcellular level structures preserved in these feathers. We have proteins that have been recovered from the feathers, like actual keratin that birds today have in their feathers from these feathers. Not only that, these feathers are preserved the exact same as feathers from birds found in this rock formation. I believe this is the Yishan Formation, formation in China that is famous for its fossils with feathers. And they're preserved the exact same way in Sinosauropteryx as they are in birds. It's actually pretty remarkable, to be honest with you. um, and Fear Face Monger says, "Do we actually get another person who can't recognize tool marks from fossil features?" Yes, that is what we're looking at right now.
Which would mean all these proto feathers are where? Under the skin. That'd be a lot of ingrown feathers. I know feathers sprout from under, but they're when they under the ooh that looks painful. That'd be. Turns out that's not what that is. His and so many others, their work on this, they found this in many other creatures. These integumentary fibers, okay, these collagenous fibers that are. They said we found another creature. Oh, they did, Dr. Fiducia. Was that from a dinosaur? Kind of. The same thing that you say are feathers, I found also on a ichthyosaur. Remember the one we carried? That's a marine reptile. What's
Yep, Stenotirigius. He is just citing Fiducia here. Like seriously, it's just Fiducia. So Raptor X Stenotirigius. I'm just gonna. Okay. Yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and pull up this article, this paper by Smithwick and colleagues that talks about this exact fossil. And I'm just going to give the brief overview here. Here's the actual paper if you want to read it. It's a great paper. I mean that sincerely. Okay. Despite a general consensus that the structures represent feathers or feather homologs, a few identify them as degraded collagen fibers derived from the skin. This latter view has been based on observations of low quality images of Sinosauropteryx, as well as the suggestion that because superficially similar structures are seen in Jurassic ichthyosaurs, they cannot represent feathers. Here we highlight issues with the evidence put forward in support of this view, showing that integumentary structures have been misinterpreted based on sedimentary features and preparation marks, and that these errors have led to incorrect conclusions being drawn about the existence of collagen in Sinosauropteryx and the ichthyosaur Stenotirigius. Sorry, that's a beast of a sentence right there. But yeah, they're saying that the marks that he's talking about with Stenotirigius, that ichthyosaur, they're just preparation marks following the body outline. They are not collagen fibers. They are preparation grooves. And not only that, we confirm that the most parsimonious interpretation of fossilized structures that look like feather homologs in Sinosauropteryx is that they are indeed the remains of feather homologs. Here are some images of Sinosauropteryx specimens. I think this one might be something else now, but these two are still Sinosauropteryx as far as I know. Yep, there. Here's some Sinosauropteryx fossils looking very closely in. I talk about the evidence for collagen fibers. So here are, yep, this is the fossils of Stenopterygius. If I can, I don't want to, come on. I don't want to do visual search. I wanted to get a closer look at the image. Okay, so these marks up here, these dark line, sorry, these marks here, these dark lines along the top of the image here, those are what Lingam Solaire, the author of the collagen paper, said were collagen fibers. Those are preparation group. Those are preparation marks. That is what they are. You can see more of them here. So this image is in black and white. That's from Lingam Solaire. This image is in color and a higher resolution, and it is so obvious that these are just preparation marks that are drilled into the surrounding bedrock. There's an even higher resolution, like close up. Here's another image from Lingam Solaire, a low resolution image from Lingam Solaire. Here's the same area in color. They're just preparation marks. That's all they are. That's all they are. I'm sorry, Ryan, but your argument has been refuted in color. Ay. Al sent a thumbs up with Jules, which thank you, Al.
What's the marine reptile doing with these supposed feathers? Same thing they found in the Sinosauropteryx and others that they are saying are feathers. In fact, in his work, he's found it on all these other creatures, other dinosaurs.
Now, I do not have time to go into all of these claims by Fiducia. However, I highly doubt I highly doubt his work. I'm going to be honest with you. I just do. And I also doubt Ryan's claims because he's also like, I don't know where to find. Yeah, okay. These might be claims buried in his book. His book, sorry. Yeah, I think these are buried in his books. Okay, sorry. Looking here, one of these sources looks like it might be from a journal, and the other looks like it's from a book. I'm not going to buy Fiducia's book to look through it, but his work has been refuted multiple times by multiple different authors and teams of authors. This publication is from 2002. I think that's his initial publication on Sinosauropteryx, which again was based on low resolution photographs of the original specimen, not on actual work on the specimen itself. Also, and I'm just going to go through this list here. Integumentary fibers / collagen found on Ichthyosaurus, Heterodontosaurus. Willing to bet those are preparation marks again. Psittacosaurus, no, we have quills from Psittacosaurus and scale impressions. Therizinosaurus? As far as I know, we've never found even skin impressions from Therizinosaurus, so that would be a real shocker. Rhamphorhynchus, highly doubt. Stenopterygius is not a plesiosaur, it's an ichthyosaur, for the record. That's the animal we were just looking at. Plesiosaurs are something completely different. Ectanosaurus, not familiar. I'm sorry. I think you've given me enough reason to just say I don't believe you. Please show your sources and don't bury them in a book.
Lizards, turtles, black snakes, pythons, crocodiles, dolphins, and woolly mammoths. So if you're going to believe that these particular dinosaurs, with these integumentary fibers, were covered in feathers.
Also, just for the record, collagen fibers don't contain melanosomes. Sinosauropteryx feathers do. Just for the record. They're also not made out of the same kind of. They're not made out of keratin. Sinosauropteryx feathers are. Sorry, Ryan.
Then you'd also have to believe so are dolphins and crocodiles and snakes and lizards and I've never heard any say they believe that. Well, if not, why not? It's good for one creature. Why not all the others? Have we ever found feathers on a dinosaur, an actual dinosaur? No. No. Nothing of any of the evidence, when peer reviewed and looked at it, has shown that that's the case. So,
just because you claim it does not make it so. Again, we can look at the actual papers describing Eutyrannus, Dilong, let's see, Psittacosaurus. We can actually read the paper talking about that. Tianulong. We can go over. What's the one from Russia? What's the one from Russia? Feathered Dino Russia. Calindodromius. We can talk about Calindodromius. We can talk about not just Sinosauropteryx, though we can talk about Sinosauropteryx. We can also look at Ceramimus, which is another compsognathid. Ceramimus. Bapiosaurus. I mean, there's plenty of Oviraptorosaurs. There's lots of Dromaeosaurids. Like, there are dozens of dinosaurs that have been found with feathers or feather-like structures. Dozens of them.
For me, I'm convicted by the evidence and by the research of what's available currently to date that we don't have hybrid dinosaur birds, that birds are not the descendants of dinosaurs. There's not an evolutionary process here. There's no reason to forsake the Word of God and its account of the creation story.
Nobody is asking you to forsake the Word of God. It's just your bias that birds cannot be dinosaurs. And you will find every source you can to try to support yourself, even the ones that have been thoroughly discredited. It's not a good look, Ryan. Who are you going to cite here?
Dr. Richard Lewontin, Harvard professor, he said back in 81, scientists, like others, sometimes tell deliberate lies because they believe that small lies will conserve big truths. Is that where we want to place our faith?
Cool. I don't care what a random biologist said back in 1981. I'm sorry. I'm to that point here. I don't care, Ryan. What does this guy have that is relevant to the discussion? Like, what else did he say that is relevant to this discussion? From 81. Nothing. I'm sorry. And we're not just lying about the fossils. The fossils are right there. You can read our papers. You can read what we did. And if you have the inclination and the training, you can redo our work. Because that's how science works. Let's see. Dune's asking, I know this is off topic, but have you heard of Ark Survival Evolved? I have. Ark is infuriating, but I still love it. I play it on occasion. I wish it took up less space on my computer so I could play it more often. MC Time says, I can tell you're passionate about paleontology, and I thank you for countering the dishonest attempts to take over academia by confusing AI and search engines. I appreciate that, MC Time. I do appreciate that. I will say that this whole thing with creationism has been around for far longer than AI or search engines. They those are just their modern tools, and they are sadly awful.
Dr. Frank Sherwin of the Institute of Creation Research, he said, evolution is a faith that unknown chemicals came together in an unknown way, at an unknown place, at an unknown time, using an unknown process to produce life.
Cool. This is one wrong. Two, coming from someone who works at ICR, wow, I wonder if they're unbiased. Um, and for three, this is talking about abiogenesis. Like, you can believe that God sparked life on Earth. Go ahead. I'm not going to stop you. I might disagree with you, but I'm not going to stop you. You can believe that. Go ahead. That does not take away any of the evidence we have for deep time and evolutionary history or relationships. I'm sorry. It just does not discount any of that information.
Is that where we want to place our faith? I hope not. I hope you can see over and over again, the more we look at it, actual science. Science is a tool. Science, I've tried to correct students when we talk to them about this. And they said, well, science says this. No, science doesn't say anything. Scientists, researchers, analysts, they say things. They take the data from science. Science is, it's like saying, well, my microscope says this. No, the microscope was the tool you use. Science is a tool. And when we use that tool, God asked us to use that tool. Just as one.
And Ryan, the thing is, we relay the information we get from our studies and from our instruments. Scientists are heavily discouraged from making things up or discredited, or sorry, we are highly discouraged from making things up or not following the evidence because all of our colleagues will call us out on it, like has been done with Fiducia and Lingam Solaire. Like we follow the evidence where it leads. That is what we do, and then we relay that information generally as truthfully as we can. And I say generally because there are bad actors in every profession. There always are. But as a general rule, paleontologists are encouraged to be honest and support what they say with evidence.
28, Adam and Eve, learn the creation, study it, because the more we study, the more we learn about it. Who do we learn about it? Romans 1 tells us our creator. And so that's what we try to do. Creation Truth Foundation. We get to work with these amazing PhD scientists who we get to share in this and do peer review and analyze all the data and bounce ideas off it. And over and over and over again, it always shows there are zero reasons to not believe God's word, to give it up, to forsake it for these man-made, flawed, man-made ideas that just never stand up, because the truth will always stand. So there you go. There's my little spiel.
Yeah, and thank you for your propaganda, Ryan. And with that, the presentation is finally over. Oh, sweet Jesus. It has taken us 5 streams to get through all of Ryan's BS. And we probably could have done that faster. But, it's fun to go off on tangents and have guests and talk about things and all that stuff. It's it probably could have been shorter, but you know what? This has been a fun little mini series. The presentation is finally over. Um, I will say, we do still have 20 minutes to go on our super chat goal, so we are going to go into his Q&A for a little bit and just talk about birds and dinosaurs and stuff. So, hey, if anyone out there has any like dinosaur questions, Feel free to ask. If you send it in a super chat, it gets highlighted for me. Excuse me. And it does help towards our sub goal, which is, again, playing a little bit of ancestors and talking a little bit about human evolution. You don't have to, of course. It's fine. I really appreciate everyone who's joined and has been watching along. We've been consistently at about 30 people for like the last hour almost, which is really cool. So I again just want to say thank you. If you like the show so far, please consider liking and subscribing. I am almost 2,000 subscribers, and when I finally reach that point, I can do ads, so I can actually get paid for these in a way besides super chats. With I like when I can do ads, I won't do a ton of them, especially on live streams. But it will be nice to actually get some consistent like ad revenue and stuff. Because I put in like 10 hours a month for this, sometimes more, sometimes a lot more, especially when I actually make videos, which I am working on. Anyway, we are going to get into his Q&A now. Donnie is going to gas him up a little bit because that's how Donnie deals. We are going to speed them up. I'm going to speed them up to 1.5 times speed. You know what? Here. We're going to open up the room, actually. So if you would like to join, you can go ahead and click the link that I'm about to pin in the chat. And I'm just going to type here. Last link to join the lobby. We can chat dinos. Yeah, okay. I'm going to go ahead and put that in the chat and I'll pin it. So, this is going to be an open show now. So, if you would like to join, if you have any comments on dinosaurs as a whole or Ryan's presentation in particular, feel free to join in. All I ask is when you join, while you're back in the lobby, give me a quick wave on camera so I know you're not a weirdo. It's happened before. And then you can turn your camera off when you actually join. You don't have to show your face for the public. It's just so I know you're not a weirdo. But yeah, anyone who wants to join, feel free. Especially, I know we had someone who debated Donnie recently in the chat earlier. God, I'm sorry. I am horrible with names. But I know we had someone who Scientific Origins said they debated Donnie earlier. If you want to join in and talk about that, please feel free. But we are going to continue the Q&A for now.
On feathers and dinosaurs, probably way more nerdy and technical than it probably needed to be. So, but there
I loved it.
In case you come across any of those arguments or those thoughts, that's we're after talking to so many experts.
Okay, and for clarity, I mean weirdos in a particular way. Some people like to bomb live streams. Let's say that.
And say both secular and so both secular evolutionary and biblical creation believing. That's where I've just been blessed with that opportunity to be able to have those connections on both sides, and that's just where I'm at. So there you go.
The truth will always stand, brother. That was.
And I'm going to turn down the speed a little bit. I'm sure Ryan's connections in the paleontological world are happy with his representations of their work. I'm sure they're happy with it if they remember him.
An excellent presentation, never too nerdy, never too technical, never too comprehensive, especially with a topic this important and in a way hotly debated. Ryan, as always, I appreciate how interactive your presentation was, how fast-paced and engaging it was.
As I hope I have helped illustrate, birds being dinosaurs is not hotly debated at all, at least in modern day. They are definitively dinosaurs. I'm sorry. Like, even Fiducia thinks that birds are related to dinosaurs, at the very least. He just doesn't think they are dinosaurs. He thinks they're a group of related archosauromorphs, which is the larger groups that dinosaurs belong to. He still thinks they evolved. He still thinks they changed. He thinks Velociraptor is a bird. Even Vidusha does not think that birds didn't evolve from something.
Was you're a great speaker, and we got a lot of positive feedback from our live chat, and we've had some critics. One specific critic who says he's a biologist and has some good follow-up questions. And Ryan, I put a lot of work into preparing for this just to see what the other side has to say on the issue. And so I went through several videos, a detailed lecture on it from the creationist perspective on feathered dinosaurs. And so I got a lot of notes and questions, but you were so thorough that you addressed about 90% of them in your talk. So that was really, really good. And I got a lot of notes here. I could start on so many different things. I'll just start with this because I like focusing on the big things, the points that are not necessarily agnostic to the debate, but a point that could actually, shift to one position over the other. So feathered dinosaurs versus dinosaurs without feathers. And so you touched on closer to the end this issue of the semi-lunate carpal.
Yeah.
And I was watching a lecture with creationists making their points in favor of feathered dinosaurs. And one of their big arguments had to do with the semi-lunate carpal, amongst other features in Microraptor. They pointed to the raptor claw, aspects of the pelvis and tail as basically a way to, and I love the fact that you address this issue in your talk, but I think it's important to reiterate. It's technical, so I want people to know that it's been addressed. And so they're saying, well, Microraptor has to be a dinosaur because of the skeleton, these skeletal features, specifically this one as well with the semi-lunate carpal, has to be a dinosaur versus a bird, and yet we know it has feathers. And so there you go, Ryan, there's a feathered dinosaur. Can you reiterate why you believe that's not the best argument?
Hey, and just for a quick comparison here, I'm going to pull a picture of a Microraptor skeleton, next to a Velociraptor skeleton. Because, like, when you put them side by side, it is like. So, yeah, here are two illustrations by Scott Hartman. This is Velociraptor up here. This is Microraptor down here. Their anatomy is functionally identical, except in matters of proportion. Microraptor has longer relative arms and legs and a shorter relative tail. It also has a relatively larger head. But otherwise, they are nearly identical. Velociraptor would have been better at scuttling along the ground. It is a more ground-dwelling relative, but otherwise the skeletons are nearly identical. They have all of the same bones in almost exactly the same orientations and relative positions. These are obviously related animals. Also, yes, Donnie does tend to say a lot and get very little actual information across. So, Ryan, how are they separate? Let's have a little review, I guess.
Well, to be a dinosaur, it has to have the hip. Again, these are the diagnostic traits, and to the present, the universally accepted, as I showed in the museums, any dinosaur technical book, textbook on that says what has to be there, always has to be there, is the fully perforated acetabulum, the hip socket, okay, that hip, and it has to be a diapsid. Microraptor doesn't have either one of those, and instead,
Microraptor has both of those. We went over before, but Microraptor is a diapsid, and Microraptor has a perforated acetabulum. It has a hole through the middle of the pelvis, and it has those two extra holes on top of the back of its skull. It has both of those. Ryan. Among a host of other traits, and also, for clarity, those are ancestral traits found in dinosaurs. Their descendants can lose those traits. However, there is almost always going to be a gradient of that trait being lost. We can see this in ankylosaurs. Basal ankylosaurs are obviously diapsids, and they have a perforated acetabulum. But as you get into the bigger, heavier, tankier ones, their acetabulum becomes unperforated, it becomes solid, and their diapsid holes get covered up with bony osteoderms. So they functionally lose those traits as they evolve, but ancestrally they have them. So a derived member of a group can lose a diagnostic trait, but it is still tied to its ancestors that have them.
It has the antitrochanter, which shows it is a bird hipped. So that right there, it's
sorry, like for example, monkeys ancestrally have a divergent big toe on their foot. Humans don't. But as you go back through the human fossil record, you can see that divergent big toe slowly climb upwards to align with the other toes. So humans have lost that divergent big toe, but we see it in our ancestors.
kind of like in math, you can have all these positive integers, but once you introduce a negative one, the whole thing becomes negative, even though you have all these other positive integers. So, and I know in math, you add another negative.
No, the loss of one trait does not take something away from belonging to another group. Like evolutionary relationships in extinct groups are based on a host of traits. Like you can point out, all dinosaurs ancestrally have a perforated acetabulum. They are diapsids. They have a mandibular fenestra, which is a hole in their jaw. Those are a few traits. There are hundreds of skeletal traits that dinosaurs share. Some lineages lose a few of those traits as they continue to evolve. That does not change their ancestry. They might lose those traits as they go, but ancestrally they had them. Like derived titanosaurs. So derived sauropods, the huge sauropods, the record breakers, they lose their fingers. Like they lose their fingers. They walk on their metacarpals. Like this. Like this is what their hands look like against the ground, except there's no fingers here. It's just the metacarpals. Dinosaurs ancestrally have fingers. And their ancestors, like the titanosaur ancestors, had fingers. But you could do this with every dinosaur group, basically. Like almost all coelurosaurs have 4 fingers or less. Like that is a thing that they all have. I think all coelurosaurs have 3 fingers or less. Just because they lose the 4th finger does not mean they aren't theropods. Jillian Wren asks, are you suggesting that Donnie would go on the internet and tell lies? Maybe. Maybe.
Well, okay. Well, that's not helping the case. Well, let's add another negative. Well, we got 2 negatives here as to like automatically cancel the possibility of it. So it's got to be warm-blooded because it has the feathers, which automatically disqualifies it from being a reptile. Because unless you're going to say birds are reptiles, and again,
birds have been classed as reptiles basically since reptilia was coined. Like reptilia is an outdated grouping. Now it's like Sauropsida, which I think is a subset of Diapsida. One of them's on top. I think Diapsida's on top. It's like Diapsida, Sauropsida, and then you have like your Lepidosaurs and Archosaurs as 2 major branches. Aves have been a part of Reptilia, now Sauropsida, for as long as the group has been around. Like they have been recognizably reptiles. They're warm-blooded reptiles because there have always been small warm-blooded dinosaurs. One group of them became birds. The rest turned into other groups that were all ancestrally warm-blooded as far as we can tell.
What is the scientific world coming to if we're accepting that kind of stuff? I mean, anything's anything then, and anything's related because we drew some lines. So the semilunar carpal, again, it's different in every creature, and even the big Albertosaurus, he's got a carpal bone, okay, and it functions slightly different, but he's got itty bitty arms, and so you would expect it to function a little bit differently, but he still has the carpal bone. All right, so the Velociraptor, he's got
Albertosaurus has carpal bones. Yes. I think I don't know if Tyrannosaurs lost their carpals. Albertosaurus arm anatomy. Let's see if we can see this. Okay, actually, it looks like Albertosaurus might have lost its carpals. At least going by a cast I'm seeing. Or the carpals might have fused. So here's a cast. This isn't an actual Albertosaurus hand. Here's digit 1, digit 2, and the little tiny remnant of digit 3, actually, because they still have that metacarpal. The carpal should be here. I'm seeing like a little tiny nibbit of bone right there, which could be a carpal. But Tyrannosaurs, they shrink their arms so much that they might have actually lost their carpals by the time you get to Tyrannosaurids. I actually would not be surprised. But the semilunate carpal is a feature in, again, Maniraptorids, which is Therizinosaurs, Dromaeosaurs, birds, and other things.
A carpal bone, and the Microraptor has a carpal bone, and they're each slightly a little different in the way they are, based on everything we can see from the.
Okay, the semilunate carpal is a very specific shape of carpal bone that allows a very particular articulation of the hand and the wrist. Like, it is very specific to a very specific niche group of dinosaurs called the Maniraptora. It is not found in other dinosaur lineages. It is specific to that group. It is one of the uniting features of Maniraptora, among others, but it is a uniting feature. Okay.
Published papers. But if you are short into the ground, and as dinosaur raptors are, like dromaeosaurs, like Dromaeosaurus, Velociraptor, and Deinonychus, and Utah Raptor, and Dakota Raptor, then I would expect that they would have a little different agility and a little bit of wrist structure because they're closer to the ground.
Okay, but we don't have a semilunate carpal in things like Compsognathus, and small Allosaurids, and small Ceratosaurs, and early theropods like Coelophysis. We don't have that in those animals. It is specifically Maniraptorids, which seem to be an exclusively Jurassic and Cretaceous lineage. Like, it is specifically within Maniraptorids that we have this semilunate carpal, not in any of the other small ground-dwelling dinosaurs. Anyway, we are about to hit the 3-hour mark. We have just over 4 minutes left to go for our super chat goal. I don't think we're going to reach it in the next 4 minutes, but if we somehow do, we will be playing a little bit of Ancestors, the Humankind Odyssey, and talking human evolution. I will need to go get a drink of water before then because my throat is getting dry. Because I've been talking for 3 hours. But if anyone would like to hop on and talk about this presentation or dinosaurs in general, please feel free. Give me a chance to rest my throat because I feel like I'm going to be. Wow, I am sounding hoarse. Excuse me. Anyway, we have a few more minutes to reach our goal. If anyone wants to chip into that, it would be appreciated. Please also do the like and subscribing thing because I am close to 1,000 and I really want to reach that milestone. Anywho,
so they can grab things on the ground and be able to use them than what a Tyrannosaurus Rex would be. He's not going to be grabbing stuff off the ground with his hands. So it seems to fit perfectly, with the created kinds and the distinctions with them. And so, I mean, and what that automatically means they can fold them in.
Again, not found with compsognathids or other small theropods. It is just Maniraptorans.
It means that it could possibly do that, but we'd have to have the preserved ligaments and structures for them to do that. With the Microraptor, we have a little more preserved regarding that compared to the.
Those can be helpful, but if you actually know anatomy, you can see where muscles and ligaments attach to bones, and you can measure how the articular surfaces can move. We can do that. We know how to do that. It's not easy. Like, you need to study it, but you can do that. And we have done that. MC Time says, I want to come up and talk, but I'm a dumbass. I will like and subscribe, though. I wish I could do more. Hey, I appreciate that, man. If you want to hop on, it's fine. Like, as long as you're not like a jerk, everyone's welcome. Though I will probably only be on for a few more minutes. Just a heads up.
Velociraptor, and again, we have molting different series of feathers on Microraptor, which shows, yeah, it's a bird. No doubt it's a bird. Okay, and again, the tail, it's long and bony. Okay, that's great. It's not the same as a Velociraptor's. It's different. So that's just where I'm at on it right now. And by the way, I will admit I've not studied the creationist pro feathered dinosaur position as well as I have the evolutionary, because that's what I had in my actual evolutionary university level classes on that. So the only I've had just slight interaction was through somebody else, and that was the question I posed about Microraptor was, well, but what about the temporal fenestrae and the warm bloodedness versus cold and all that kind of stuff? And their only response back was, and they copied and pasted it verbatim, was, well, yeah, those are good points. They had no rebuttal. So I'm like, okay, well, because I've like Jolte, I mentioned Jolte.
Yeah.
And I think he's a way better expert on this than me. When we talked about this, I said, okay, I see that diagnostic trait that they're saying makes it a dinosaur and a bird at the same time. I don't know how we can do that as a Bible believer. But anyway.
Nested hierarchy. That's how we do it. Like birds are nested within dinosaurs. That's how it goes. Sorry, Ryan. You should have known that. You should know this.
I said, but this has to be answered for me. And one of the biggest things is the thermal regulation. You cannot be cold-blooded and have feathers, according to unless there's.
I don't know. I still don't know who's saying this. Like, a cold-blooded animal can hypothetically have feathers. It is completely possible for that to happen. With that said, dinosaurs as a whole seem to be ancestrally feathered and warm-blooded. It is not an issue, Ryan.
Somebody somewhere that's missing. Everybody that's both evolutionary and creationists have agreed on that unanimously. So that's something that's got to be fixed for me. The consistency and the hip structure, because all the other things are things. Well, okay, well, we got eyeballs. Yeah, well, so do fish, so do dogs, so do dinosaurs, so do humans, so do birds. Okay, we should expect there to be certain anatomical features for life to exist on this planet. That does not mean common ancestor, right, as is the evolutionary argument, but it means a common designer and a common place to live for his glory. So that's so when some of those things come up, like, hey, that is a good point. That's because when it comes to dinosaurs.
Okay, and with that, we have hit 3 hours and 5 minutes. My voice is I don't know if you guys can hear. My voice is actually cracking. Oh, Well, I was about to call it to an end, but we did have someone join the lobby, so might let them in quick. Real quick, could you just give me a quick wave on camera and then turn off your camera, and then you can turn your camera off. Just make sure. Okay, okay, you're good. Can go ahead and add you. Hello, MC Time. How are you doing today?
How are you, sir? What's your name?
I'm Doc. I,
Doctor is Doctor Dino. Is that
Doc
want to make sure
Dino.
just
Yeah,
pronounce?
it's
Okay,
okay.
yeah. My Mac time. Call me Mac time, man.
Alright.
Well, I see you about to. I see you about to close down shop. So I'll just ask you this one question. Cause you were talking about warm blooded. I heard that dinosaurs were also cold blooded too. Is that true? And did those? If so, was the cold blooded dinosaur? Did they have feathers too, or do we know that?
So were there some cold-blooded dinosaurs and did they have feathers? That's your question?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we have a few ways to measure an extinct animal's body temperature. One of the most reliable methods is by looking at the teeth, because enamel is a very chemically resilient chemical. So the stable isotopes, so you know how there are different weights of different elements.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So different stable isotopes will be incorporated into teeth depending on the body temperature of the animal. So we can use that as a proxy for the animal's body temperature. And when we do that with dinosaurs, we consistently get a range that is within like the range of modern mammals and the range of modern birds. So consistently between about 25 degrees Celsius and 40 degrees Celsius, it's in that range.
Okay.
So even towards the lower end isn't really cold-blooded. It's what you could call mesothermic.
Okay. Lukewarm.
But ancestrally, they seem to have been warm-blooded, though some might have lost it eventually, just due to lifestyle changes. Like it's happened in mammals before. It's happened with, I think, some birds have
Really?
more
They got
mesothermic.
cold-blooded mammals? Or did they have cold-blooded mammals?
I believe there are more there are more cold-blooded mammals. No.
Well, we'll just put that to the table because I know you're about to close shop. I don't want to open a whole nother can of worms on you.
Oh, it's okay. Yes, there's an extinct species of goat that seems to have become either ectothermic or mesothermic.
Okay, that's interesting.
Right there.
That's interesting.
What happened with mammals? At the lowest body temperatures we have for dinosaurs are still like in the lower range for mammals. Like I said, about 25 degrees Celsius.
Okay.
As for whether or not we might have had cold-blooded ones with feathers, feather impressions are fairly rare, but within dinosaurs, they're widespread. So it seems like dinosaurs as a group might have been ancestrally feathered. So if any of those became cold-blooded, they probably would have retained the feathers, though I can't say for sure. We don't have feather impressions for every species, but we do have them from a wide range of species.
Roger. I understand this is a human endeavor. We're doing the best we can with what we got. So I understand.
Yes. And sadly, dinosaur fossils are limited.
Yeah, yes, sir. Well, I thank you for answering my question. I know you're about to close shop. Appreciate you, sir. Drop down now.
No problem, and I appreciate you too. Thank you for hopping on. Okay. And yeah, with that, I think I will call it to a close. So, thank you to everyone who dropped by. Thank you for everyone who was watching. This has been a fun little mini-series. Next week, we will be covering something different. I'm not sure what we'll be covering just yet, but it will be something different. I want to take a break from Ryan Cox and his elevating my blood pressure because that happens. Again, appreciate all of you. Thank you for stopping by, and I hope you enjoyed. Adios, everybody. I'll see you soon.